It's time for MacBreak Weekly. Big panel, Andy, Renee, Lori, me, Alex, Lindsay. We're going to talk about, of course, Apple at CES. They actually were there. The new rack-mountable Mac Pro. Let's see, the Pro mode that might be coming to Catalina. And Daisy, the robot that will be taking apart your iPhone. It's all coming up next on MacBreak Weekly. MacBreak Weekly comes to you from Twit's LastPass Studios. Securing every access point in your company doesn't have to be a challenge. LastPass unifies access and authentication to make securing your employees simple and secure. Check out lastpass.com/twit to learn more.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit. This is MacBreak Weekly, episode 696, recorded Tuesday, January 14th, 2020. Mac in a rack. MacBreak Weekly is brought to you by IT Pro TV. IT Pro TV provides IT training that's effective and entertaining with access to virtual labs and practice tests. Visit itpro.tv/MacBreak for an additional 30% off the lifetime of your active subscription. Use the code MacBreak30 at checkout. And by LastPass. LastPass is a personal password manager and identity solution for businesses that helps secure everywhere you work and live. One password gets you in, and LastPass will take care of the rest. Visit lastpass.com/twit to learn more. And by Capterra. Find the right tools to make an informed software decision for your business. Visit Capterra's free website at capterra.com/MacBreak. It's time for MacBreak Weekly, the show where we cover the latest news from Apple. And yes, I'm back. Thank you, Andy and Micah and everybody for filling in for me last week. Back from CES. The whole gang is assembled. Renee Ritchie from imore.com. Good to see you, Renee. Welcome.
Good to see you, Leo. I enjoyed yours and Lori's coverage so much. I had massive FOMO not being there this year, but you helped satiate it.
It was in hindsight, it was fun. It's like having a baby. You quickly forget the pain. Lori, it's the only way God can get you to do it twice. Lori Gill was at CES from iMore. She's managing editor. That was great running into you. And
it was great seeing you. Yeah.
I wish we'd had more time together, but we both had miles to go before
Next year,
sleep.
Let's plan something ahead of time. That way we can actually do a segment or something like that.
Well, you should be part of our coverage. That's what we should do. We should go. One of the things I neglected to do is go around and see Apple and iPad stuff at CES, and there was a bit of it, I think. Is that what you covered?
A couple of things, yeah. Accessories and cool stuff like that.
Also here, Andy Inako, who is, as always, homebound from Inako.com.
Oh, come on. I'm still on crutches, but I'm not okay. Actually, if anyone wants to drop off home-cooked meals, I should play this up.
Oh, we should do a covered dish brigade for Andrew so he doesn't have to cook.
It was great New Year's Eve because I was able to guilt people to say, well, I'm going to just have an open house on January 1st. So if you want to come over and have some whiskey and watch some movies, but that's okay. Being a shut-in, it's all right. I raised my friends so they could have independent lives.
He's an old man before his time.
I want the pity.
Also with us in studio, Alex Lindsay. Did you go to CES or no?
I did not.
No. You usually do, don't you?
This is the first year in a long time. I was just busy.
Yeah.
Kind of putting some stuff together.
It's the first year in a long time I've gone. I hadn't gone in 8 years. I thought if I wait every 8 to 10 years before
then
I
it's
go,
impressive.
Yeah.
There'll be new stuff.
It's not that new.
The stuff I talked about 8 years ago will actually be available.
Well, that's a good example because of course TVs are always a big part of CES and 8K as you would expect. Oh, by the way, hey, I'm glad to be able to say this for the first time this year. Micah said it last show, but this is our LastPass Studios. How you like that?
Nice.
They had a lot of 8K TVs, especially the micro LEDs, although there were QLED and other kinds of LCD-based 8K. But the most impressive was Samsung's, they call it the wall.
Yeah.
It was 290 inches or something. Did you see that, Lori?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was really impressive.
When a tiger comes at you out of that wall, you run. Yeah, it made me think about the early days of motion pictures. Remember the first movie had a train coming at you out of a tunnel?
Yeah.
And people were terrified and left the theater screaming. It was kind of like that.
Yeah.
Very realistic.
That's the experience.
So I have a question for you, Leo.
with Sony.
Just watching it from home, I was struck by two things. One, all of our tech friends were saying, "Oh, this is really the concept electronic show. It's not the consumer."
Yeah,
but
Gruber
then all they
said that,
covered
and I
was the
thought-
concepts.
Well, that's all that's there, really. I mean, there were a lot of concept cars, concept products, but that's
Concept phones.
I've cautioned, a lot of folding phones that will never come out. I've been cautioning people about that for 10 years. 10 years ago, I said, look, nothing you're going to see here it will be available at best until the end of the year. And in many cases will never be available. Sony got a lot of attention for announcing a car that they will never make.
No, yeah.
It's a concept car. Didn't look
The
particularly...
Drive Man. They didn't even call it the Drive Man. I was waiting.
Yeah, Gruber said it should be called the Concept Electronics Show.
But look, Lenovo, I actually had to single out Lenovo, saying, "Oh my God, they not only did they show off this really interesting looking folding version of the ThinkPad, but they actually offered specs. They let the reporters actually play with it and do things with it, and they announced like a ship date and a price. This is what show am I at?"
It was the ThinkPad X1 Fold. But I have to say, as somebody who looked at a lot of folding screens, I mean, they can do this now because particularly OLED technology is flexible. You can, and I saw a lot of companies that are wrapped around cylinders and stuff. But I don't know about
like
you,
a
Lori.
plastic substrate, right?
Yeah, every time I saw these screens, there were crinkles and creases and bumps. Nothing was as good as a real flat glass screen.
I think that's, for now, that's the best we're going to get. Even with the best, most advanced technology, you're still going to have those kind of crinkles and lines in the middle. But I think what we'll see for the next few years, at least with these foldable phones that actually make it to market, is that people are just going to get used to it. And then there's going to be the innovation where they're making the screens that don't have those creases in them. And that's where things will get big again. So for now, just the fact that it's a folding screen is the thing, even with the kind of folding spot in the middle.
What about the idea of a folding screen like Microsoft showed, also a concept that won't be available till later this year? The Duo, where it has two screens with a hinge in the middle. Is that not as good?
I don't think it's not as good. It's not as innovative. I think two separate screens on one phone, like that could be like what happens in the future, but that's not as innovative as the folding glass or the folding display, which I think is the cool new future of technology. So if it turns out that phones just have two separate screens, that's fine. It's fine. It's like having, your remote screen or whatever. It's the innovation is in the screen itself being able to fold, which I don't think we're going to see a good quality version of in the next couple of years.
I think that's a really interesting concept, though. The idea, even if you have a hinge in the middle, which will make it more durable, which will make it cheaper to make and more practical, the fact that Microsoft and Intel are doubling up and saying, well, we're creating a brand new version of Windows to support it. The number of times where I'm sort of in two tasks at the same time, where I'm watching a video, but I also need to keep an eye on like where my Uber is, or I'm writing notes on something while I'm writing about something, or even just I am reading a book and I want something to flow across 2 pages, or just the idea of we will have one screen in laptop mode that works as a screen, another screen that works as an input device. All of these, and being able to switch between these modes really, really easily. I have to say, I'm really fascinated by this, and I can't wait to see the new hardware coming out later this year.
I always see the folding screens, and I just remember the saying that if you're 1 step ahead, you're a leader. If you're 2 steps ahead, you're a martyr. And I feel like so far they've been good martyrs.
That was kind of Gruber's point. Was Apple does concepts, but they keep them inside. They keep them to themselves until they're ready to ship them.
For like a decade, sometimes
they produce. They take things all the way to the end, and then they go nope.
Oh, and I actually respect that. It almost feels like, and I think this was Gruber's point, that you're trying too hard when you do these concepts to say, see, we can create, we have courage, we can invent.
I do think that there's sometimes there is an opportunity to get people thinking about something. You're softening the ground. You're softening the ground for something that you want to do 2 or 3 years down the road, and you're getting people to think about it.
That's traditionally what CES was about, is
getting
going there and talking
to stakeholders.
Yeah, exactly. You're going to CES to say, would you buy this?
Right.
Not to
developers, would you support this? Yeah.
Not to consumers, and it's not particularly for developers. It's sort of for the press, but really it's for dealers.
Buyers.
And it's buyers. And it's saying, well, if we made this in December, would you buy it? Would you stock it?
Hey, Best Buy, how many of these would you take?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I understand that. And that's one of the things as press that we need to remind people is that this isn't necessarily products you can buy or
look how much coverage we got from this. Wouldn't you love to see this in your style next year?
There's that, and I think we're going to see more of that. And they do it at Pepcom's Digital Experience, which is one of the very first events. It's before the show floor.
They're inviting people
open.
for next year already. Save the
I know.
date. Stop.
It bothers me. Companies spend at least $15,000 to be at these smaller events where there's lots of food.
Much nicer.
Much nicer, much easier to cover. And they know that CNN and the other mainstream media, Channel 8, will be there.
And all the bloggers.
And then say, we were at CES, here's what we saw, and go home. So, and I think they're even selling prime real estate near the front door because mainstream journalists are so lazy. They go in, they say, we got the shot.
It's near the food, Leo. It's near the food. That's the problem.
No, they're in such a hurry. They got the shot. They go home or go to a nice restaurant. So to the left of the door is a Segway egg that you roll around in, right? And to the right of the door is the Charmin Rollbot, which not even a concept. They're not.
No,
I talked to the kid who's
for poop. It's amazing.
I talked to the kid who made it. He said, "Oh yeah, well, this isn't a product. We just thought it'd be fun. It's got the Charmin bear on it. It holds a toilet paper roll, and the concept is you're sitting on the can and there's no toilet paper. You go, hey, bro. They don't mention how does it get in the door? How does it get the roll on it? They don't none of that because it isn't a product. The whole purpose of this, and I think you're going to see more of this, is when the cameraman comes in the front door, they shoot that. Charmin gets a free ad, and then they go home. Hey, we saw the greatest thing at CES. It was a toilet paper roll delivery bot.
More people discussed Charmin in the last week.
Yeah.
Than my point exactly.
It
works.
Whoever thought that was a good idea, they're brilliant. Brilliant.
It works.
No, that's always it, and that's one of the things that kind of worries me about like modern coverage, especially now that you've got so many really, really good people with such entertaining YouTube channels. It's like I feel as though sometimes I don't because I want to make sure that I'm not putting like YouTube people down.
No, I think the YouTubers are smarter than the local news. These guys, Charmin doesn't care about YouTubers. They're going after Channel 8. They want Channel 8 to run that on tonight's news. You'll never believe what we saw at CES because it's a Charmin ad. They don't care about YouTube.
But and a lot of times,
I think the YouTubers are smarter.
Don't volunteer to do the devil's work. So when I see, I was tweeting about that since we mentioned it, the rolling egg. It's like I'm not going to mention what it is because the reason why they built this was just say, hey, here's something that demos incredibly well on video. Right. So we're going to build this one off, and we're definitely not going to build it. You feel like I don't want to do the devil's work by helping promote a brand that had no intention of actually making something cool.
Yeah, let me be clear. I'm not criticizing Charmin. That's good marketing. I'm criticizing the stupid, gullible press that falls for that and says, "Oh, here's the big story," because it was the first thing they saw when they came in the door.
But I think that a lot of times,
can we get Kathy Lee to write in this? Is that okay? Yes, absolutely. Let Kathy Lee write in this.
I do think a lot of times you can imagine something before it actually happens. For instance, when the iPhone video, the first iPhone GS or whatever, the first one with video, right? It was the second iPhone.
3GS, yeah.
Yeah, 3GS. When it came out, I literally bought it. I ran over to the office and I cobbled together a bunch of hardware around it and talked about how you could have it on a shoulder mount, and you have a mic and a light and a thing and a thing. I just put it all together and I threw it up, an hour after I bought the phone.
Got 8 million hits probably.
It did. Yeah. It did. Well, this is before YouTube, or not before YouTube, but I didn't post it on YouTube. I put it on the website and Wired picked it up.
Yeah.
And so it was like it almost thumped our server.
Dvorak always says the most hits he ever got for any YouTube video was his bathroom video. He literally shot in his bathroom of Barney singing a song, a little Barney doll singing a song.
Well, the most
it's because that gets hits, right?
Well, and like the most viewed MacBreak video that we was the Road to 1080p where
people were interested how did you do that?
Well, we hadn't gotten one out yet because I couldn't get it out, so I just recorded something on QuickTime and put it out. It's
in contrast to
this
that,
model.
And I will say this: 8K is not here yet, although the Olympics will be shot in 8K.
We'll see
there
a
are
lot
8K
more.
cameras; they're coming, and 8K TVs. At least the micro LEDs are barely able to make micro LED, but the concept is great because they're
so expensive.
Squares.
They're selling little sub panels, right?
Yeah,
you can't buy.
That's how they make them. They're all sub panels.
Yeah, the canvas.
Even the giant 292-inch screen is a bunch of tiles put together. That's the point of it. It's arbitrary size. But
also they can't manufacture them without defects, and they'd be so expensive to fix defects that are larger.
Yeah. That's right, and it takes a very special installation process. You have to align it perfectly, and even on many of them, I could see the seams and light content.
That's always because modular LED is something that all of us have seen at events. All those big LED walls behind
The
people
Apple
on
TVs
stages
too.
is all modular LED, but this is a much
My
more
point
refined
is,
one.
this is not a Charmin robot.
Yeah.
In this case, this is something that is going to happen. I think. I mean, there's still questions whether they'll ever get the manufacture process reliable, but I think they will, and I think it's the future of TV. I told Lisa we're standing in front of this. I think 145-inch micro LED 8K TV. I'm saying, it won't be next year, but in 10 years or 5 years, that will be our TV. That's you're going to be in a room that the one wall is a beautiful 8K television.
We're getting very close to the Velt.
That's the Velt. Yeah. It's funny that you said that because that's exactly what I said.
Yeah.
This reminds me of Ray Bradbury's short story of the Velt. It very much was that, and it was kind of cool.
Yeah.
In fact, they had a lot of African footage on there. I think they knew too. Yeah,
exactly.
Bring it back to Apple, though. I really wish that Apple would show off one of the great concept builds. They're okay for PR, but it really is good to see. Here we have wonderful designers and we have wonderful ideas about what the future could be like. Here is if we are unfettered by commercial limitations and even the limitations of what the technology can do right now, what would we do for an Apple Watch now? Or even the idea of the Knowledge Navigator, which was utterly just fantasy in the 80s when Apple made that video, but then it really makes you think about how ubiquitous and helpful a technology can be. And then when Apple actually starts to make something not dissimilar to that, boy, do they look good. I think that part of the power of technology is to get people to imagine and to sort of think about a future that's even better than what we've got now.
I can think of two concepts that Apple did. This was one, the Knowledge Navigator under John Scully, and the other was the Apple AirPower mat. Both of them ended badly.
Right. It was a good video. Also a good John Louis Gasset gag at a keynote later on. But
yeah, I just feel like that it didn't help Apple in any particular way because they never could make it right.
Hinge screen. But the thing is, they never promised to make it. This is just. It's okay to be fanciful and say that here's what imagine 20 years ago they were imagining, well, what if we have electronic brain driven cars? What would we design for the cabin to be? And it's not just communicating to people. The designers are wonderfully creative and artistic people. So they all have sketchbooks that are full of ideas of things that they would love to do someday, but they probably won't live long enough to do it. Just like when I love subscribing to like my favorite comic book artists' Instagrams, because their sketchbooks are just like, I just had this idea in my hand of what a capybara would look like as a Navy admiral. And so you see 8 pages of sketches of this character that they're probably never going to do anything with, but it just shows you it's so entertaining and it's thought-provoking, and at least it's the part of the expression of an artist to let their mind go to places that the marketplace will never go.
There is an advantage.
We saw them in the Samsung lawsuit, though. Remember, Andy? They had all the different items.
The advantage to doing this is it does inspire designers and engineers with the possibilities. It took them 30 years to make something even vaguely like this, but at least somebody has in their head an idea. A lot of this was based on Alan Kay's early work and early. So, okay, that's fine. I'm glad Apple doesn't fall into the trap of doing a lot of these because they could show off all sorts of stuff and it just muddies the water. It's not clear what they're.
We have
all the car stuff was done early. Like they have tons and tons of concept stuff all for different phases of car projects.
Yeah, Apple could have had a whole
very
booth
few people have ever seen.
Like a lot of car companies did at CES with self-driving pod vehicles for the city of the future.
What I do like that Apple's doing more of is that they are, when they release a product, they're doing things that get you thinking about what it's capable of. So these little short films that they're doing with iPhones that they might take a crew of 40 people and they might have cost a lot of money. But you get like, oh, that's you could actually have something interesting to watch that you're shooting with your iPhone. So regardless of how big they went with it, it starts to show you that that's what's possible. It's not just that it can do these things.
It is a point that Steve Jobs had left Apple before the Knowledge Navigator video was produced.
Right.
He wasn't in Apple during AirPower. I think the Knowledge Navigator also was being, as I remember, was made for the TED conference, which back when it was in Monterey Bay. And so it was really more about for a conference,
Right.
than for the general.
But do you remember that quote from Jobs that Gruber surfaced there too, where he said he loved the best cars were the ones that they showed off as a concept. Those are the perfect cars. Don't change a thing. But then they take them to the engineers. Engineers go, no, we can't build that, and they make it less. And they take it to the manufacturers, and they say, no, we can't even do that, and they make it less. And he hated that. He wanted what you came up with as a concept to ship. So when he and Johnny Ive worked on the original iMac, they brought it and said, oh yeah, that's a cute concept, but we can't make that. And he's like, no, this is exactly what you're making.
Of course, on the other end of that, you end up with the keyboards that we had for a couple of years.
Yeah.
Where maybe
Well,
we
those
should
were
have said no.
concepts, you know,
Maybe
they
we
could-
should
Those
have
are
Yeah.
concept butterflies. This, by the way, I want to show one more video because Bud Colligan wrote about the Knowledge Navigator video, and he said there was another video we made in '88 that didn't get as much play. This is what will we do with computers in the future, and they interviewed Ray Bradbury. There's
were ever heard of.
a very young
who wheeled it into
Woz.
fourth through and taught.
They showed a lot of ideas about how computers might look in the future. That actually
caused by an eruption.
That looks about right for now.
yeah, they're a little bit closer.
still ahead of what we have now.
That's how I have my hair.
Remember, this is '88.
I know, there's still-
what
and
do
we
we
still
have in
haven't gotten
'88?
there.
I mean, there's the Knowledge Navigator being used much like an iPad would be used. There's an iMac. This is '88. Remember,
Yeah.
they didn't even have the little Bondi Blue iMacs by then. So
The trails now constitute.
that's Alan Kay. I think really Alan gets a lot of credit for a lot of thinking around this. But so
Isn't
there.
this much better than all those pieces from the 70s saying one day we'll even have
Yeah.
computers in the kitchen that organize all of
Yeah.
mom's recipes.
Oh,
One
the
of-
World Fair.
If you want to be visionary, be visionary. Just absolutely go for it.
Look at this one. This is a little later on.
a real sense of the time.
So if we had a machine that we could play games with and take each
Is that
subject
Asimov? Who is
to
that?
its
That's
farthest
Bradbury.
point,
Oh, it's Ray Bradbury. Yes. Look at this.
you could say to the machine, how come I love
Decepticons.
dinosaurs so much? Show me all the covers of the science fiction magazines my father and my grandfather
everything-
grew up
These
with.
guys were
Everything was
dreaming. They were
frozen.
speculating in
To become
1988.
scientists or
But
technologists.
by the time the internet
to
comes
fall in
along
love
and an
with the
iPad
future.
or a
the things that
laptop,
make us want to live
it's not so
forever.
far-fetched, is it?
Right.
That sort of machine, I think, would be absolutely incredible for a child. to
Still no
play.
idea for direct manipulation,
We're all
though, which
doing
is
the
interesting.
same thing.
I'm just sad Ray
Same work,
Bradbury never
but we're
got to
doing
see
it
the
in
Velt
different ways.
in action.
And saying, my God,
He
isn't
knew.
this
He knew exactly what was
Well,
coming.
that was part of his business plan. He was so prolific. He wrote so many different things every day. He's
One
like,
of them was gonna
I'm
come
going to write a story about every single version of a computer that could possibly exist, even like ones you spray in the air like aerosol. And
Hey, let me take a little.
And at some point, I'll be right.
Let me take a little break, and when we come back, we will talk about Apple's presence at CES because for the first time in 18 years, they had an official presence there, and I don't know how well it went, but we'll talk about that in just a second. Our show today brought to you by IT Pro TV. You're watching this show, you watch our shows. I know you're a geek. I know you're an enthusiast. You love technology. Have you ever thought about working in technology? There are more jobs in IT today than almost any other field. And if you can get the skills and the certs you need to get that first job, the sky is the limit. Kick off the year by accelerating your career if you're already in IT, getting your IT team certified. Yes, they have great team training. And the best teachers, they call them edutainers. I think that's kind of unfair. They're all professionals. They all work in IT, but they're also really good at explaining concepts, at teaching. That's what IT Pro TV is so good at. It's actually enjoyable. It's fun. Plus, you get practice tests. So if you're studying for certification, you could take the test before you take the real test. They've got hands-on learning with their virtual machine labs. You can have multiple instances running of Windows Server and desktop clients, but you can run it on anything. As long as you have an HTML5 browser, you can set up your own Windows Server. You don't have to own one. It is great depending, no matter what kind of IT you're interested in, whether it's entry level, you need those certs to get that first job. You're trying to become a sysadmin. If you want to do desktop support, cloud technology, security. There are two different plans. Premium members can take advantage of one-on-one learning coach services. So you're not even on your own. You can get a one-to-one coach, will give you a little extra guidance. If you're interested in getting the CompTIA certs, the A+, Network Plus, or Security Plus, you'll be glad to know IT Pro TV is the official video training partner for CompTIA. They've got 12 CompTIA on-demand courses. Standard membership is the video only. Premium membership includes the labs, the practice tests, and all the video. Thousands of hours of on-demand video and more being made every single day. They shoot live Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. You can watch live as well. Grow your career at IT Pro TV. It's itpro.tv/MacBreak. itpro.tv/MacBreak. And if you will, use the code MacBreak30. That'll save you 30% off as long as you stay active forever. That's a great deal. itpro.tv/MacBreak. The offer code MacBreak30 for 30% off as long as you stay active. Look, IT is fun, IT is interesting, and there are great jobs, high-paying jobs all over the country, all over the world. itpro.tv/MacBreak. Use the offer code MacBreak30. I talk to people who watch our shows who have got jobs in the Middle East, in Africa, in Japan, in China, all because they know IT, and there is a huge demand for IT professionals. So do it. itpro.tv/MacBreak. Do it. Do it. So Jane Horvath, who's Apple's chief privacy officer, led a panel. I did not make it to this. It looks like not many people did. It looks kind of a small room here. It was a panel on Tuesday to debate the state of consumer privacy. She talked a little bit about encryption. Now, it turned out her timing was good because yesterday the U.S. Department of Justice and William Barr and the FBI said, Apple, you've got to help us unencrypt this phone used by terrorists in the Pensacola naval base shootings. And Apple said, we can't, we won't, but we also can't. The debate is once again, just like it was after San Bernardino, raised about what the FBI should get access to. She said, our phones are relatively small. They get lost and stolen. If we're going to be able to rely on our health data and finance data on our devices, we need to make sure if you misplace that device, you're not losing your data. That's why we encrypt. Building backdoors into encryption, she said, is not the way we're going to solve those issues. Apple does privacy by design, differential privacy, user randomization, on-device facial recognition stays on the phone, data retrieval for Siri is minimized. She did say that Apple scans for child sexual abuse content uploaded to iCloud. She wasn't very specific, but Apple later released, I found out this morning, a press release saying they're doing, I think, essentially the same thing Facebook, Microsoft, and Amazon do. They're using hashes of known child pornography, seeing if those hashes match hashes of images on iCloud. That doesn't mean they're looking at your images. They're just making hashes and comparing them. I imagine if they match, at that point they look at them. So that is as minimal of an intrusion as possible. But she wasn't clear about that, and I think that's concerned people when they said, we're looking for child sexual abuse. And it made me wonder, well, what other illegal stuff are you looking for? You know, are you checking to see if I have pirated movies in there? Are you checking to see if I've got any pictures of me with a bong? You know, what?
So it can sell you bong-related accessories and products.
Yes, right. But if they're just doing hashes, that's something a lot of people do. What about this debate? I mean, we talked a little bit about it today on iOS Today. I did with Micah. Steve Gibson has talked about it before. Steve believes it's possible for Apple to have keep in escrow a backdoor key that it uses only when presented with a lawful warrant, and that by doing so they can keep it out of the hands of bad guys. I'm not sure I agree with that. What do you think?
I think you get into a situation where the people who worked on it eventually aren't working at Apple.
Well, let's say,
they understand.
No, it's a technological. Like, I'll give you half the key. I'll keep half the key. We'll keep a third.
But what we found is that we can't keep things secure. Like, we can't keep things secret. If you have people start to work on it, eventually it starts to unravel.
There's also the issue of what if China comes to you and says, right. I know you can decrypt the phone. I would like the contents of every Uyghur's iPhone right now.
Well, and once you open this, all the countries are going to want it. And the United States may only use a warrant to get this, and it may only happen 5 times a year. But China will do it all the time.
Right.
Egypt will do it all the time. Saudi Arabia will do it all the time. Right. Because once it's opened up there, that's because if we look at it, Apple follows the law.
Why doesn't Bill Barr get this?
Because he's an idiot.
No, he's not. He's not. He's not an idiot.
Unfortunately, he's not an idiot.
And it's not just him. It's also the GCHQ in Britain. It's also Australia. I mean, there are a lot of
Well,
governments saying we want to encryption. Russian, it's illegal to encrypt.
It's New Zealand and Australia, which are both part of
the Five Eyes.
Of the Five Eyes. That's the soft point in the wall. So the reason that what's happening in Australia and New Zealand is coming out of the United States. Let's just be clear of that.
We've initiated.
We're manipulating that process, and those legislatures in Australia and New Zealand are being manipulated by our intelligence, because our intelligence wants in to those things, and the easiest place to go is somewhere where people aren't as worried about it and aren't as don't have the same concerns that
and
we
maybe
have
trust
freedom,
government a little bit
and trust
more.
government more, which they shouldn't. And so the thing is that they. So I think that the problem is that they want to have absolute access to all of our information at any point in time. I mean, that's what every government agency wants, because their job is to keep us safe, and they just want to be safe. And the bottom line is a guy at Bill Barr's age isn't going to really understand what the issues are. He probably barely knows how to use email. So the thing is, I'm not kidding. I mean, I work with some of these guys. I mean, they don't really do that. And so, the understanding all the nuances of what this looks like is outside of their, historical capacity. And so,
should we worry though that he will convince Congress and that Congress will act and that this will become a law? I mean,
I think they're going to have a hard time in the current Supreme Court structure to doing that. It's one of the advantages of the direction the Supreme Court, regardless of what you feel like the rest of it. One of the things is this Supreme Court is probably not going to allow that to go.
They're
through.
conservative enough that they're not going to allow.
They're probably it would all come down to Roberts, and I don't think Roberts would allow this to go through. So I think that I think that the reason that we haven't gotten to a point where the FBI is willing to take it to court is because I think they know what I just said, which is if they take it to court and they lose it forever. They lose it until the Supreme Court changes, and what they're trying to do is apply public pressure on Apple to do this, because they have lots of cases that they're doing this with. And Renee's got a great video that he did yesterday.
Yeah, yesterday. Yeah.
So that you should watch if you're interested in this.
Is this Vector, Renee?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's great video. And the thing is that they have lots and lots of these cases. They're using the ones that pull at our heartstrings so that they can try to get public support for it, because they can't get legal support for it. After SOPA and all these other, I don't think Congress really wants to deal with it. They don't want to deal with it in an election year. They're not going to, no one in Congress wants to touch this issue in an election year. And I think that they know that the courts aren't on their side. So the FBI is going to try to make Apple look bad.
Renee, this is different from what they were asking, though, in the San Bernardino case. You covered that in great depth.
It's different in language, if not in intent. So with the San Bernardino, to back up just a little bit, Apple's put out a statement. I put a copy of it up on Twitter. It's very long. It is incredibly precisely worded. And one of the things Apple does really well is they put it in very plain language. And they describe, one of the things that Bill Barr said that made me doubt his credibility entirely was that Apple had provided nothing substantial or substantive in terms of help for the FBI. And the problem is, you can get away with that in political discussions because people have a lot of feelings about politics, but technology isn't anywhere nearly as pliable. And Apple provided them with the iCloud backup, they provided them with the metadata, all of the things that Apple typically does for every request. And there is a wealth of information. But what's interesting in Apple's disclosure was that the FBI, very similar to San Bernardino, waited a long time. I think they said they waited a month to ask them for one of the phones, didn't even tell them there was a second phone at first. And they sort of botched the normal procedure along the way. And one of the things that they seem to do, one of their recourses is when they botch the basic procedure of gathering evidence, they start complaining very publicly that Apple won't let them into the phone after, the San Bernardino, they actually changed the iCloud password and locked themselves out and then complained bitterly about Apple not helping them for a month. This.
Oh, and they didn't find anything either in the San Bernardino one.
No.
They're not
All right. So let me argue on the other side, just a little bit of devil's advocate. You can understand why the FBI would want to get what's on these phones. There might be information about how the guy was radicalized. There might be information about accomplices. There might be information.
They said they want his WhatsApp and Telegram. I think.
Whatever. There's information. It's completely conceivable on that phone that would help protect us from future attacks. So I think law enforcement. I'm not going to speak for William Barr, but I think law enforcement, the guys on the ground, have a very legitimate interest in protecting us and saying, look, there's information on this phone that would help make us safer. Why shouldn't we ask Apple for it?
I think the problem is that the FBI and the government, they're asking the corporations or the companies that built these to do the hacking, but they don't need them to do that. To unlock one individual phone, there's lots of hackers out there that can figure that kind of thing out.
That's
that
what
can
happened
dig
in
into
San
that.
Bernardino, right? They went to Cellbrite.
Right. So to ask a corporation to completely change, what they do to protect all of our privacy in order to create one master key that unlocks all iPhones instead of just finding one person who can just hack it. I think that before there was a such thing as smartphones, the FBI, they would go out and they would, set up their little microphones and they would track people and they would, track their pagers and things like that. There were ways that they were.
They still have that capability. Yeah,
they've never had.
So now, why are corporations like Apple having to shoulder the responsibility of hacking into these people's
well, what's changed
content
is
instead of
Apple has given us technologies that can be fully encrypted, and it's not just the iPhone; it's things like Signal or WhatsApp. And so law enforcement is saying, but wait a minute, we used to be able to wiretap everything with a court order. Now they're using the phrase going dark. We can't listen to everything, and that makes us less safe.
So they couldn't listen to everything before. They were getting, let's just say that they were getting about 2% of the communication before. Now they're getting about 90% of the conversation. And what they want is that last 10.
Yeah, that's what Phil Zimmerman, the creator of PGP, told me when I interviewed him on Triangulation. He said, they've got a wide screen 8K view of the world. They're just a few dark pixels, and they don't want any dead pixels.
It's stunning. Like
there's cameras everywhere.
There's not only that, the metadata
traffic.
The metadata. So the metadata of knowing everybody that you talk to, everything, what phones were near each other at the same time. These are all things that they're able to grab onto right now, and they're able to get an enormous amount of data. And we as Americans make these choices all the time. We decided in New York that stop and frisk is not appropriate, even though it was very effective. If you want to drop crime in New York, stop and frisk. But it stomps on people's personal rights. And it became a thing that we decided, at least New Yorkers decided, wasn't going to be appropriate. San Francisco decided that even though facial recognition will make us safer, we don't want to do it. And so people, we're gonna limit our safety based on our freedom.
We make that calculation all the time,
right? And what we do by opening this up in the United States is we put every dissident, every individual in every country at risk. Like, it's not just Americans; it puts the world at risk, because as soon as they open this door, every country will require it, and Apple follows the laws of the local country. So as soon as they break this down. It's the reason that I get upset about it is that it's one of the few things that I see as just an incredibly destructive. This is playing around with visual material.
It also feels like it's futile, because even if you could get Apple to do it, then a bad guy could use Signal. There's well-known crypto out there, or they could roll their own that you wouldn't be. There will always be a way for bad guys to communicate privately.
And the other issue that I think is really critical is that this is like the first step in what's happening in this huge digital transition. And we've talked about this before, but my phone has basically become my external cybernetics. It knows more about me than I can remember at this point, and I put everything in this little crypto brick because I assume a certain level of security. And this is just going to continue. People are going to have stuff stored in artificial limbs. They're going to have stuff stored in or even Elon Musk is making brain interactions. Jeff Hawking is working on Dementia. There's all these different interfaces, and once the cybernetics gets more and more internalized, the same laws and standards that we set now is going to govern that. And if the idea of a backdoor into your phone is scary, the idea of a backdoor into your brain interactions is going to be doubly scary. We don't just take every baby's DNA at birth for a reason, and we've got to just, as people, decide what is inbounds and what is out of bounds. And I don't think technology is going to get any less invasive, so we have to make sure that the legal rights we have for that technology become more and more protected.
Here is the last paragraph of Apple's statement. We've always maintained there is no such thing as a backdoor just for the good guys. Backdoors can also be exploited by those who threaten our national security and the data security of our customers. Today, law enforcement has access to more data than ever before in history. So Americans do not have to choose between weakening encryption and solving investigations. We feel strongly that encryption is vital to protecting our country and our users' data. You have to say, right on. That's exactly the right.
It's so well written.
That's exactly the right statement. And I hope it resonates with members of Congress, other lawmakers. I think we've probably lost William Barr and the GCHQ, but I hope it resonates with others.
Yeah.
You know? And the other problem, of course, is the dissidents may not just be in China, Russia, and Turkey. They may also end up being in the United States.
Oh, absolutely.
And we want to protect the right to political dissent everywhere.
And the thing that's important is for us to be, as citizens, this is a democracy, still, so far, that it's important for us to be ready, that when we see someone actually getting close to the gate on this, is that we all rise up and let them know it's not okay. I mean, this has killed other things. Most, politicians are relatively, on a short leash, and we can pull on that leash pretty hard as citizens. And this comes down to writing your congressman, marching, whatever. I mean, this is something that you need to pay attention to, because this is not something, it's not, the issue is it's not that important to the most representatives. So if they get a lot of heat for it, they're just going to walk away.
I'm also going to point out that government and law enforcement and the people lobbying for this will always use, there's right now two things, terrorism and child pornography. They will always use the most scary, the most, strongest terms for illegality, because who would disagree? We've got to fight those things.
But we would waterboard people. We would do the most horrendous thing. Like they always say also, what if it was your family member? And we were trying to say, I would do anything. I would, there would be no law. That's why we need these protections.
There's nothing in the law that says, well, this would only be used for child pornography and terrorism.
Yeah.
Right.
It could be used for anything. And so while they're going to use that to kind of push these things through, it isn't really what it's about.
We were promised when we gave our Social Security numbers, when we created Social Security,
those
we
are
were promised
identification.
the one thing we're not going to do with it is collect taxes.
Yeah.
They don't even call it a Social Security number anymore. They call it your tax ID number. Like, this is what happens. Is it?
And we're also not very consistent in what we call. We're not very consistent in what we label terrorism, and it would be it can be very easily abused in order to get into things that they want to get into.
That's right.
You guys are so good. I tried to argue the other side. I tried.
You need to, Leo. That's your job.
That's my job. Apple was also represented at CES by 1,000 accessory manufacturers. At one point, Macworld Expo just became the iPhone accessory show.
Right.
CES is not that bad yet, but there were a
Remember
lot.
Tiny Town?
Yeah, Tiny Town. Yeah. CES has its equivalent, which is called the the Eureka Pavilion. It's like it's kind of fun. It's like did you go down there in the Sands basement, Lori? It was kind of it's like a science fair. All sorts of just crazy.
It was interesting. I talked to someone at Mophie a couple years ago and asked why there's so much Apple stuff. I mean, there's a lot of Android stuff as well, but there's so much Apple, devices. And he said, well, number one is Apple users buy more stuff. And number two, he said, it's one device. There's only a handful.
It's easier to do.
He goes, you have one thing that is half the market or a third of the market or whatever, and then everything else is all this just, there's lots of little ones, and it's just hard to develop products for them.
Mophie, which is owned, I guess, by Zag now, did talk about making a AirPower device.
Can I talk about this stuff a little bit?
Yeah.
I actually got to review the maker, the CEO of Era, which is the company that's doing the free positional charging for Nomad right now.
Yep.
This is really fascinating. This is just one company that's doing this. I think at the moment, they just happen to be the first company to have something available to put to market.
Did he address why Apple didn't do AirPower and how they've solved those problems?
Nope. We didn't talk about AirPower because they don't want
to be compared.
They don't want to throw that out there because for one thing, the particular one that they've got on the market, it doesn't charge an iPhone, and that it doesn't charge an Apple Watch.
Because Apple Watch is not straight Qi; it has its own little thing going.
Exactly. So they're trying to not throw out that sort of general. It's not AirPower, and part of the reason is that from Era's perspective, AirPower was this one pad that could charge 3 things.
Right.
What they can do can charge 6 things, depending on what you need.
How big? I mean, I'm looking at a picture of this. This is, by the way, it's a prototype. But how big is that?
So that particular pad, this is based on what Nomad asked them to make, which charges 3 devices in a row, and that's only because of the size of it.
But they can make it bigger.
They can make it as big as a table. So if you can kind of look at those different boards that are in there, what happens is like through this like matrix of charging coils that they've put together, and this isn't just Qi coils one stacked on top of the other like the Zen's Liberty. This is a system of charging coils that are all talking to each other using an algorithm, so that when you place your phone down on anywhere on this tablet, you don't have to find another hole for the Qi circle. You put it anywhere, and the matrix, like the algorithm, it will search for it and find it and connect to it.
So it's almost like beam-forming Qi power.
Sort of like that,
It
right?
aims
Yeah.
itself.
Yeah, so it'll go to it and it'll charge on that. So it's a more like position-free version of charging. And after having that discussion with him and then hearing that Mophie is doing something similar, which nobody was able to give me any solid information about who Mophie is working with, so I'm not sure who their company is that's helping them build their free positional charging. But it's fascinating, and this is, in my opinion, this is where we're going with charging right now. Wireless charging is there, it's stagnating and it's trapped behind this sort of Qi certification, and the Qi standard just needs to be updated. And these companies, it's not just one that thinks that they're going to rule the world. There are companies out there that are saying to the consortium, like, we've got some ideas, let's update the standard. So that's going to change, I think, probably within the year, maybe that there's going to be a new Qi standard that includes and incorporates multiple charging devices, and not just single coils stacked on top of each other, but a way to sort of spread out that charging so that there's like multi-positional charging in the world. So
I did
it's
see
exciting.
a lot of furniture that, IKEA has been selling this for a while, but I did see a lot of furniture that just said, oh, you just put your phone here and it'll charge. And I would love that. That would be nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So is there something inherent to the Qi spec that makes this hard to do, that they're going to have to modify the spec a little bit?
Yes, the current standard allows for a single coil with a single processor chip attached to that single coil, which is why when you see those multi-coil chargers like that,
they're not Qi.
They are Qi, and they just use a single coil either stacked on top of each other or side by side. And so that's not really free positioning. It's just a bunch of them so that you're more likely to land on it. It's not free charging, which doesn't use a single coil method at all. It uses sort of like a matrix of coils that are all interacting with each other.
We also saw a lot of CarPlay head units from Alpine, a couple more from Pioneer. For people who have older cars that don't support CarPlay. I love CarPlay. I want CarPlay in every car I buy now.
I want it embedded on the iPhones. Even though I don't have it, I can just use it anyway.
Is there no like auto mode on an iPhone? There is on Android.
No,
phones.
it has do not
mode?
disturb in car, but it turns off almost everything. I would much rather they have an embedded CarPlay.
I sent way too many texts to people saying, I'm driving. I'm not accepting texts right now. And I see that in my thread.
And Android Auto lets you use it off the phone. So I wish Apple would just use CarPlay off the phone.
I love that. Yeah.
It's pretty useful off the phone, too.
Yeah. I did get to drive in, I think, what's going to be my next vehicle in the fall, the Ford Mustang Mach-E. Didn't drive it. I got to sit in it and talk to actually Ford's head of global products, Darren Palmer, who is apparently a fan. Hey. Hi, Darren. And they have AirPlay and CarPlay. I'm saying Android Auto and CarPlay. Wireless, which is nice, and a Qi charger right below it. So you just take your phone, put it on the wireless charger, and it's automatically doing CarPlay, which is, to me, the perfect solution.
Yep.
That's the only reason I'm buying that car, by the way.
How much is it? How much is it?
It's not that expensive. I'm getting the first edition, which is $60,000 before the $7,500 federal tax rebate. There's a California tax rebate, but I think they're going to start at
took it away from us.
Depends on the manufacturer. Tesla doesn't get it because they've sold, so you only get it for the first couple $100,000.
Oh, I see.
So, and I think it goes down to $39,000. It's Darren. So nobody was allowed to get in this car, but Darren let us in. They had a big sign on it saying it's locked for your protection. And he said, when you get in, jump in really fast. And when you get out, jump out really fast so nobody else thinks they can get in. But see where my phone is right there? You could kind of see it in this video right below. That's just the wireless charging thing. And CarPlay just connects up to it. I think that's exactly right.
So great.
He also did something interesting, or they also did something interesting, which is it watches the kinds of things. So instead of having, I guess it probably has a CarPlay display, but instead of just that. It has this own Ford, VIP futurist sync, and it will pick pieces of the puzzle out. So it depends, like it has its own Spotify, but it also has Pandora. So depending on what you use, like if you use Waze a lot, Waze will show up there. So depending on what you use, you're going to get kind of a somewhat customized array of buttons for the things that you use the most, which I think is smart. I'm sure Apple wouldn't let them not put the CarPlay display up. So I'm sure that's also.
When does it go on sale?
This fall. He said he'd move me to the front of the line.
There you go.
Ooh.
I already put a deposit down like day one, so I'm sure I'm pretty close to the front anyway.
You were already close enough to the front.
He said, well, we'll look for your name. We'll see if we can find you and move you up.
You can be amongst the first people to wrap a Mustang around a tree after exiting a Cars and Coffee video.
So something really dumb just occurred to me, but is charging universal, like standardized the way, like I can take any car to any gas station? Can you do that with no?
There's all
the government
sorts of
is asleep at the
standards.
wheel.
There's all sorts of standards, but it's starting to change. That was one of the reasons I bought a Tesla, is because Tesla had its own supercharger network, but those only work with Teslas. But there is a standard. Remember Audi's and Audi VW's Dieselgate? Remember when they were cheating the emissions tests? They got caught. Part of their settlement was they had to spend more than $1 billion to electrify. In fact, the company's called Electrify America, to build a fast charger network all over the United States, and that's already being built. That is what will end up being the standard. It's called CCS, fast charging. That will end up. There are others. There's CHAdeMO, and there's a few others. In fact, the Nissan Leaf only does CHAdeMO.
The EU isn't mandating USB-C for cars yet.
Well, I think there is. Let's put it this way: there's an emerging standard, because everybody realizes, well, that's no good. It has to be like a gas station where you just pull up and charge. The Tesla comes with adapters, and you can use adapters. But I think there will be a standard. I think Electrify America is going to power that. Ford has a deal with Electrify America. So, yes, that's something you got to keep in mind, especially in the Great White North.
I hadn't even thought about it before.
Yeah. Well, there's something called range anxiety, which is, nobody. I mean, I guess when I was a kid, we always had gas anxiety because we couldn't afford to buy a full tank. So
I
That's
had
my
gas
75
anxiety.
cents going to get me.
I would always
gas.
I would always forget to fill it up, and so my gas anxiety was mostly that I was like I had to coast down one hill to get enough speed to go up the next hill to get to the gas station.
But that's why I liked my Bug, because it had the reserve tank. Remember, it didn't have a gas. It didn't have a gas gauge, so you just drove it till it ran out of gas. Then you'd flip that lever, and you'd have another 10 miles or whatever to get to the gas station. Anyway, that's of course one of many things that is making electrification challenging. And it's all still a small percentage of overall cars. But it's nice to see real car makers making not compliance cars that just have to make to meet emission standards, but cars people really will know how to drive. Yeah. And I think this was one of them. I was very pleased to see it. What else? I think that's all about CES. Was there anything else, Lori, that I didn't mention? We did 38 videos.
Wow.
My goal was 40, but I thought we'll never get 40.
Robots. That's one thing you didn't talk about. The weird robots.
Did you see the Arnold Schwarzenegger robot?
I didn't see it, but I read about it.
I think we might have a video we can show you.
Yeah.
It was. I don't know how AI-y it was, but it was definitely a little creepy. This is our robot. We actually made put a bunch of robots into one segment. There was the ping pong playing robot was back. The robotic dog was back, which was very scary. There were lots of these cute, cuddly.
Yeah,
things.
so many.
This was a robot that delivered dinner. I was excited about that.
Give him some.
This was a pet fitness robot. Your cat chases it. But let me get to the Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's in here somewhere. Oh, that was a window. That was a window cleaning robot. There's the scary robot dogs.
Oh, yep. These are so weird looking.
Oh, that roll over, sit up, come for me and bite my hand. Ow!
Our friend Michael Fisher keeps buying the social robots, and then they keep turning off the servers, and he makes videos about them dying, and it's all very sad.
Look.
Can you turn on the sound?
Oh, God.
Lights and capture image.
Here, let me go back a little bit here, so you can hear him talk to you. It was. I don't think they did. It was a little Arnold Schwarzenegger,
It looks like Arnold at 90 when he has a lot of plastic surgery to make himself look 50 again.
Capture images. Maybe self-driving cars are a bad idea.
Are your eyes okay?
Right. That's damn right.
I can perform customized tasks in hospitals, hotels, smart offices.
There was a lot of this, and I don't know how
to interact with human beings and help them.
Intelligent or autonomous these things are, but there were a lot of them. This is a hospitality robot.
And of course, Omron.
All I need is for my vacuum robot to bring me drinks, and then I don't need anything else about it.
Last year, still very, very popular.
Lots of people lined up to play ping
Hello,
pong.
this is my new friend Lico, right?
This was creepy as hell.
Friend Lico like to do.
Russell said it was warm. He said he picked it up and it was warm, and he just couldn't get that out of his brain.
It's 98.6 degrees.
Probably just used his diaper. Needs a change.
Look over there, or you just want to talk to me? Trying to collect the data.
It's actually doing face recognition.
It's reading all the information off of your cell phone. Just give it a minute.
There we go. You said this will be available later this year?
Yeah, later this year. Will you dance?
They always say that.
Do a dance, Lico.
Watch here, it's going to dance.
Dancing
It
robot.
doesn't stand up.
Outstanding.
It's
You're a better dancer
it does
than
chair
I am,
dancing.
Lico. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ahem. Robots, lots of them. Yeah, the art. Did you see anything other than those? Because it was mostly like hospitality robots, things like that.
Yeah. I didn't see. I think I saw one that was. I think it was called Robo C, and it was very similar to the one that does the Schwarzenegger one, where it creates like a mapping of your face and creates this grossly real looking body, like top part of the body, and then there's like a big computer screen attached to it, so that it can have that sort of AI interaction with you, but it uses like way too real of facial features and expressions.
Apple has its own robots. There's Liam, and then there's Daisy.
Yeah.
Yep. And
They're
Daisy,
terrifying. If you're an iPhone, you should be scared for your life.
if Daisy can get the job done, Apple
they
wouldn't
should
have
call-
to mine bauxite or any of these unpleasant materials. They could just.
They should have called her Deckard because its job is to retire other iPhones.
Yes, he's kind
I
of a
wonder
Blade
if the
Runner
new
of
iPhone
robots.
9 will be recycled, because they haven't done an iPhone out of recycled aluminum yet. So I wonder if the iPhone 9 will be recycled. Finally. #finally.
A lot of it's aluminum, right? Recycled aluminum.
Yeah. Even the new I think the 10.2-inch iPad, they said the Mac Mini is 100% recycled, but none of the iPhones have been yet. So I'm wondering if they're going to use the March, if there is a March event and if there is an iPhone 9 there. I wonder if they're ready to announce a recycled iPhone yet.
Could be.
Hey, speaking of new products from Apple, we've got a new version of the Mac Pro. We'll talk about that in just a second. Our sponsor today.
How many did you buy, Leo? Tell me after the.
Buy any. I can't afford that thing. Are you kidding me? And I don't know what I would do with it. I have an iMac Pro, and I barely scratch the surface of what it's capable
So
of.
the worst thing is that we were all talking about this, and we're like, for most people, you don't need it. But a bunch of our techno friends went and bought it, and now a month later, they're like, I'm not really using very much.
I fell for that with the iMac Pro. It was, $5,000 to start. I got the 10-core version. If I use one core, I feel happy.
But your last Mac Pro was a media server, right, Leo? So it's fine. Everything's
that's
fine.
true. Yeah. Our show today brought to you by LastPass. You probably noticed the signage. We are in the new Twit LastPass studios. Thank you, LastPass. We actually have been fans of LastPass since long before they were sponsored. Since they started, I've been using LastPass for a decade now. I'm not alone. 17.8 million people use it. 61,000 businesses. LastPass. Well, I used to say it's a password vault, but it's so much more than that. It's really an award-winning security solution that helps you and businesses navigate online lives easily and securely. There's a free plan. You just start with that just to see if, how it works and whether you like it. There's a premium plan for individuals, family plan. That's what we use at home. I can easily share passwords with Lisa. Also, my wife is my emergency access designee. That means if something should happen to me, she can get access to my vault. She doesn't have access until something happens to me. But that's kind of reassuring to know that your family can access your vault if something should go wrong. The business plan we use here at work is awesome too. There's Teams, Enterprise, MFA, or Identity. LastPass.com/twit has all the details, but let me give you in a nutshell what LastPass does. First of all, it generates strong passwords. The number one password problem, I think, is reusing passwords. Not merely weak passwords, but reused passwords. That's because there's so many breaches these days that, you know, one of your logins and passwords is probably leaked out into the world. If you use that same password elsewhere, they're going to try every service to log in with that password. You should never reuse passwords. LastPass generates long, strong passwords that it keeps track of, so you never have to. In fact, they have a security challenge you can run through. I do it every few months to see if there are any reused passwords or passwords that have been leaked in breaches, so that you can and it helps you do it, easily change them. Sharing passwords is easy. We have folders for ops and for business office and different things, and they have access to the information they need. LastPass for business also offers very flexible password management, single sign-on, and multi-factor authentication options, including things besides just, that authenticator. I use a YubiKey with my LastPass, which I love, but they'll also use IP address, geolocation, a lot of other things to make sure you really are the person who should be able to access this resource. And it works everywhere you are, on every device: Apple Watch, iPhone, iPad, Mac, Windows, Android. It's so secure, you can even store important documents. I keep my passport in it. When I travel, it's nice to have a copy of your passport, but I'm not going to leave a Xerox in my luggage. I just have it on my LastPass. So that's really handy. We also keep our corporate credit cards there, driver's license, anything, social security numbers that you need to store safely and securely. And it's never decrypted except on device by you. No one can get access to my LastPass vault except me. They now offer single sign-on passwordless login for employees at businesses. We love that feature. LastPass, I've never mentioned this before, but I want you to know they use trusted world-class third-party security firms to conduct routine audits all the time to test the infrastructure, test the software, test the service, so that you can be assured that it is absolutely secure. Their detailed review of controls and processes is the gold standard for confirming their security, their reliability. AES 256, they sync over TLS. I can do all the buzzwords. They really do some interesting things to prevent brute force, like PBKDF2. I've learned all about this from Steve, who looked at the source code and said this is the right way to do it. We use LastPass Enterprise at Twit. I use LastPass at home. I highly recommend it. It is the most important thing you can do to secure yourself. And it's easy. LastPass.com/twit. Find out how they can help you at home, at the office. LastPass.com/twit. We're really pleased that we could partner with LastPass, because I feel like it's almost a public service to tell people about it and to get them using it. I'm on a mission. I have been for years to get people to use LastPass. So, Rack Mount Mac Pro. Are you excited?
Oh, yeah.
The Rack Pro.
The Rack Pro.
Alex, I'm pretty sure you're the one that's going to be getting some of those, right?
Eventually.
$500 more,
let 'em
right?
sort this out. Yeah, but it just makes so much sense. There's so many places, if you're
You save the money on wheels.
Yeah, exactly.
But you spend it on the wheel. The wheels are on the side now.
I mean, the main thing is all of us wanted to be able to do this with, and some people actually did it with the old cheese graters, where they'd cut the ears off and put them in and.
But they did have Xserve. They did have a rack mount Macintosh for years.
A single, yeah, but it wasn't nearly as extensible as this, and it wasn't like a real. I don't know. It wasn't really a real computer to this level. Like, this is something that you can wire into a mainframe, and not in a mainframe, but into a server room. You can put a bunch of these in a server room. And if you think about, like, a lot of visual effects firms and a lot of graphics firms will have all the computers in a nice, cool room somewhere else, and then they just pipe everything, and you just have a monitor and a keyboard, and you're working. And so that's why these rack mounts make a lot more sense.
They have rails, so they slide right into the standard rack. How many U's?
That's probably what you're paying extra.
3U, 5U?
It looks like 6.
6U?
I mean, I don't know for sure, but when I look at it from me just glancing at it, I would say either 6 or 8U.
It's interesting that after killing the Xserve, Apple's kind of acknowledging that there's a business here. That this is something. I like it. The switches on the side mean and it has handles so you can pull it out.
I think Apple had this issue where there was going to be there's already a large portion of the industry that left Apple because the old Mac Pro, the
you
trash
couldn't put
can.
the trash can in a. I guess people tried to rack it.
They put three of them in a
wine
rack
cellar or something.
It was it was a little weird, and then it's hard to get to, and it wasn't really built for that configuration. And the issue is that Apple started losing a lot of people. Where people are going to Premiere, they're going to other things. They're going to because the Mac Pro, the trash can, wasn't scalable and it wasn't giving people what they needed to do really heavy work. And so the problem is that you start losing brain trust at that point. I don't know whether it's really you make that much money on it, but you do start losing people who you don't want to necessarily lose as far as the ecosystem goes. So I think it's important that they built something that, and now it's almost infinitely scalable. So now you can put in as much as you want. If you're an R&D, I mean, there is definitely some number crunching that being able to put 1.5 terabytes of RAM into it makes sense. And
that'll be cheaper like next year and the year after. And the way a lot of people were upset with the initial starting price, but that's basically just the container unit you're buying. And then you can upgrade and add new parts, exactly like you said, modularly for years and years to come. I saw a couple people who work with AK were talking about it, and they bought about midline specs, but they imagine within 2 years what they have then will be now top line specs, but there'll be even more room to add more terabytes and more RAM and more stuff on top of it. So it's like a 10-year investment for them just in the system.
It's a 5U unit. According to
awesome.
Apple.
There you go.
So look at that, baby. Man, that's pretty. That's pretty. Up to 1.5 terabyte of DDR4 ECC RAM. Of course, you could upgrade the RAM yourself because the user accessible DIMM slots. Yay!
Yeah.
Graphics.
Almost everything. Like people are putting the most remarkable, well, at least testing the most remarkable things in
Is
there.
there some way of interlac? If you had rack-mounted interlinking, the rack-mounted to make a render farm of some kind?
Well, you'd have a control unit that's sending those renders out. I mean, that's typically what happens is you have a whole bunch of machines that are working.
You don't have to treat it as a single unit. You could just say, hey, it's
it just
machine one, you do that. Machine two, you do that.
Yeah, you break it up, and it just depends on what calculation has to be done based on whether it can be done in parallel or in series.
Well, if you're going to get a micro LED 8K TV, you're probably going to want to make sure your production company has a Mac Pro to feed it the 8K content.
I have a feeling they're going to make about as many as they can. They're going to sell about as many as they can make for quite some time.
Their timing's good because I think 8K is. I mean, people are looking at 8K content production.
Yeah,
and you need this.
Isn't that the basketball players' TV? That was the old joke. It's like whatever the highest end TV is, it sells mostly to it sells mostly to athletes.
Yeah, I don't think it's athletes that are buying Mac Pros.
Well, also if you're thinking about VR,
they can afford it, but they're not buying it.
If you're thinking about VR is incredibly large files because oftentimes we're rendering everything you have to see all the way around.
You were showing me that Angkor Wat.
And that's
temple,
and that took that takes my little iMac. It took it half an hour to build the model. And that's just one little piece.
Right.
Now we saw what Justine's.
She was building.
She was talking about the fact that I think on Twit. I think when we were doing Twit that she was having trouble figuring out what can you slam the.
How
and I was
how
like,
to
I
peg
have
it.
something.
How to peg it?
So we pegged it. But even then, she was still editing 8K on it while she was, while it was doing all these calculations. But all 28 cores were fully utilized. A
lot of headroom in this.
I believe it's public knowledge now, but Dr. Wave is on the Pro Workflow team from Pixar, who's just the most amazing individual. Really, really into AR and all these things. And he was showing Toy Story, I think it was Toy Story 4, whatever the latest one is. And he's like, this is a scene with Woody. Then you pull back and this is the room. And then you pull back and this is the fair. And then you pull back and this is the world. And like he's just throwing it around like in real time, like it's nobody's business. And he said, yep, it's all ported to AMD now and it works great on the Mac Pro and just more polygons than I've ever seen on a screen before.
Yeah. I wonder if Apple has thought about, AMD announced some really heavy duty chips at CES, including a Threadripper with 64 cores for a mere $4,000. Nothing Intel could come even close to. I wonder if Apple has thought about putting AMD.
They're so customized for Intel. Like there's two things. one is that their stuff is they work very closely with Intel. They do that with AMD for graphics chips, but like everything from power nap to the way that they handle security from the T2 chip into the Intel structure, and also the single-threaded stuff that Intel does for a lot of people is still a primary workload. They're not that many people are multi-core yet, so you'd have to divide.
Oh no, but
between
AMD's
Intel
got
and
better,
AMD.
faster single-core processor as well. That's the point, is that you're not giving up your single-core speed.
I haven't heard that from the gamers. I've heard mostly from
really?
the multi-core people, like the video workflows that AMD
I thought
is
gamers
way better, but
loved
not
the
for
AMDs.
For the CPU, maybe. The last few that I heard, it was mostly like for video professionals. Like, I would love it. I personally would be so into that so quickly.
Yeah.
But I just heard from a lot of people who's like, okay, sit down, creative. Here's what I do and why I'm just fine.
Well, and so much of the calculations now are sitting on the GPU as well. So a lot of that, or they can be interchangeable. I think that in the grand scheme of things, I wouldn't expect the difference between those two processors to. I mean, I'm sure it's going to increase the speed, but I don't think it's going to be like double the speed of the machine because you put the faster processor in,
Right.
because there's all the subsystems, there's the GPUs, and there's a lot of other things that can be added to. So I'm thinking more of a 10 or 20%.
I think for a long time, AMD's single core was not as good, but I think that's kind of part of the story of these new Ryzen chips, is that their single core performance is also improving.
Yeah.
And of course, certainly cost per core is well below Intel's.
And they're per watt because they're down to 7 nanometers, and Intel still
That's right.
hasn't gone down. And 10 nanometer for Intel is about the same as 7 nanometer for Taiwan Semiconductor. Those are marketing names now, not actual sizes anymore.
Yeah.
But they're still so far ahead that
So
I would
Alex,
love AMD on so many levels.
You couldn't use a 64. Wouldn't a 64 core processor be
I could.
better for you? Oh yeah, I thought you could.
No, I'm saying no, but when I look at like
Oh, I thought you could.
yeah.
but just
So
checking.
I could use all the process. All
I mean,
those
just because
cores.
Apple has locked itself into Intel doesn't mean. I mean, especially since they do work with AMD, that they couldn't at some point.
No, but I think that beyond the spec, I mean, it's easy to look at the spec, but it's also like, how does it handle heat? How does it handle, like for instance.
I think it's like, I don't know what the TPU is. I think it's like 750 watts or something. I mean, the thing is like a little heater.
But we don't know like what does it take to actually, as far as that goes. Do you have to liquid cool it to get the full
think
performance?
Apple's doing something in there. Well, I'm seeing a lot of enthusiasts building Threadripper gaming machines and other kinds of machines.
I have a Threadripper in the PC that I have.
Yeah.
And
Do you like it?
Oh yeah, it's great. It's fast. It's but it's liquid cooled, and it's got a lot of other things that are built to it, so that I couldn't necessarily do in a Mac Pro to get the full performance out of that. And I think that the issue is that there's a lot of other things other than just the specs that are going to make a difference. For instance, a good example is my little iMac. If I put that project that I gave Justine, if I put that project into it, it'll run for 2 days, and then the iMac will restart. Like it doesn't.
I can't handle it.
I kept on when I was going on trips. I'd put the project into it, and then I'd go on the trip, and I'd come back, and nothing had happened. And I'm like, I don't understand. It was running when I left, and I realized that it was. And I finally did this thing where it saves along the steps, and I finally figured out what was happening it was just getting to one part, and then just thumping the computer. Not even kind of like a little like it crashes the app. The computer just stopped working. And I finally believe that it's because I was getting into outside the heat, So if it turns out if you run the CPU for 2 days straight at its full maximum, it's more than it was designed
It'll gate,
for.
right? It'll gate. And then
Well, it could win the 24-hour of Le Mans.
Yeah, exactly.
If it wanted to.
Yeah, exactly.
Leave some Jiffy pop on the top of it. If you see it's pop, that you know that something must have happened.
I stand corrected. Expert in our chat room says the Threadripper 3990X is a 240 watt TDP. A mere 240 watt TDP.
That's a lot of watt.
That's a lot of watt, and of course, a lot of watts means a lot of heat.
Right, and again, I think that there's a lot of calculations into what chip is getting used beyond how many cores and what the raw speed is. It's all how does it affect the environment? How do you put it in?
But there's also no meltdown, right, on AMD CPUs, from what I can remember, which is nice.
Right.
So many good aspects.
Well, all right. So the question was, you think at any point Apple might go AMD?
What about ARM on the mobile and AMD on the higher end?
Yeah.
I don't think number one, I don't think Apple will go to. I don't think that they care enough about that chipset to.
It's not. There's so much other stuff that's not.
This is not a. I don't think this is a hill they want to fight a battle on, and then I think that it'll be Intel into the future because this is not something they want to shift, but I think that all our mobile platforms will end up in ARM. So I think that our maybe our MacBook Pro. But everything below the MacBook Pro, I think, is going to end up in ARM within the next 5 years.
Well,
Even
that's
13-inch Pro.
that's when Pro non-Pro kind of makes a little more sense. When you have a distinction with the Pros are Intels,
right?
The rest are ARM. It makes a little bit more sense. Yep. Apple put out a press release January 8th, a couple of days ago. What it looked like an earnings announcement, but it wasn't. Apple rings in new era of services following landmark year. You guys want to explain to me what's going on?
They do this every year, though. I mean, every year people spend more and more. And New Year's Day is the part that confuses me. Every year, Apple sets new records for App Store purchases on New Year's Day. Like, I could understand maybe Christmas, but the New Year's Day feels like 4th of July to me. Is it just that people have had enough of the holidays and they don't want to talk to their families anymore? And it's a new year. They can start fresh by downloading all the apps and tuning. I don't get the New Year's part.
Well, that's when
congratulations, tons of money.
That's when people go back to work, is after New Year's. So Apple Store customers, according to this press release, spent $1.42 billion in the week between Christmas and New Year's Eve. Yeah. That's a 16% increase over last year. They, for some reason, on New Year's Day, they spent $386 million. Well, you got some time.
Are they hungover and they need a nap?
You got nothing else to do. That's a 20% increase. And that is a new single-day record. So apparently New Year's Day is when people spend the most money on the App Store. I could see the day after Christmas maybe, but why New Year's Day?
They're all hanging out.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Hanging out, watching
but it's a good story for Wall Street. I mean,
if you look at
if you look at their stock price lately, which I mean, like a lot of people attribute it to services, but I think Neil Seibart is correct when he says it's a lot of people who suddenly felt underpossessed of Apple stock, rallying the price higher. But it's just it is so much better and so much more an understandable story for Wall Street when Apple talks about services, or at least it's a story that Wall Street is comfortable hearing from Apple as opposed to just hit products. What are those?
60 million songs on Apple Music. They didn't say anything about how many subscribers, but it's safe to say they're doing okay, right?
Yeah. And even Apple News was surprised me because Apple News to me is the worst of their services because it's in so few countries and the interface for the app is just so much further behind all the other services apps. It reminds me of like Apple Music before that big Posama reboot at WWDC, and it's still there. They got what is it? 100,000,
100 million monthly active users in the U.S., UK, Australia, and Canada. That is kind of mind-boggling.
It really does go to show you the marketing advantage of having a product or service that is owned and created by the same company that makes the phone. And this is why since time immemorial, regulators have been worried about, well, I don't think you should be able to package the music service or the web browser or the whatever it is that you create with the brand new phone that you also sell, because if people already have a web browser or a music service, they're not going to go looking for other people's web browsers or music services.
So to put this in context, the magazine service Apple bought for nearly $500 million, Texture, never got more than 200,000 subscribers. So from 200,000 to 100 million.
Oh, but this is
There's also not a lot of competition
right? Not News
for this
Plus.
specific
slice. Oh, this is okay. Thank you for clarifying.
Right. Yeah.
This is not people paying for the magazines.
Right.
This is
I don't
the
know what that
total
is.
news product. Okay. Yeah. All right. That's a good. Thank you.
Because I find, do you use News Plus that much?
Mm-hmm. No, I killed the subscription after I did the trial, and Lisa yelled at me, so we now have it.
I still have it, but I can't like search for a single article. Like I know an article exists, I want to read it.
And they've made it worse
and
and worse. They've made it worse.
Well, the one thing though is now I get access to like Wall Street Journal because it's in Apple News Plus, and I see the articles pop up, and I can actually watch them. But the other thing is that if I want to share Apple News,
you can't share it.
Well, when you share it, it takes you back to Apple News.
You're sharing a link to Apple News.
And so now I have to go find the article on the web, copy it, put it in Twitter. Like it's like this little like dance that I have to do because it doesn't make any sense to send people to Apple News.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I should share the actual link and then
Can you open in Safari? Can you at least do that?
No.
Yes.
You can open them in Safari. It's just it's too many extra steps though, which is I think Alex's complaint is that if I just want to share an article that I read on Twitter or share the article on Twitter, I have to, I'm reading the article, I have to hit the share sheet, then I have to hit, open in Safari, then I go to Safari, and then I click, to copy that link, then I go to Twitter to share it in Twitter. And that's just too many steps to sharing that article. You're less likely to share things that you've read through News Plus or the News app.
Right, and by contrast with Flipboard, you just hit share, you get the link, you put it up, and you go.
Here's a stat I liked. It was toward the end, and I think not widely covered. 75% of iCloud users use two-factor authentication.
Yeah,
that is a huge number. Most people don't.
I think it does it by default, though.
I think that's why.
I think that's why
Apple pushes you, but
there's also some things that you can't even access without it now.
Right.
So like even I think the 25% that are still using the other way to authenticate are just so behind. They're still using a phone that's like really old or something.
They're not even active. It's probably like it's probably like they use their iCloud like once a month.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Did you guys phone snoop in Vegas? Because one of the things I always loved to do at CES was see what other people's phones were using, and not like so much the journalists, but just people in booths and things. And I would always see a surprising amount of really old iPhones when I did that.
I didn't
That's
pay attention.
true.
Did you?
Actually,
Lauren?
I didn't really think much about it until you just said it. But people that are like in the sort of like in the industry that like PR people. That's what I noticed. A lot of PR people are still using kind of old phones. Like it was kind of a surprise. Like iPhone 6. They're like, oh, you're still on that phone, huh?
That's because they're normal people.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Is like we live in this like a world where we get every single brand new product, and so an iPhone 6, which isn't that old, seems really old to us, but the average person doesn't need anything newer than that.
I think you could argue it's certainly true for me. The reason I got into this business was so that I would always have the latest devices. I remember specifically about 40 years ago saying, I want to always have the latest technology. How can I do that? What could I pursue?
And so you invented a whole industry, Leo. Great. Thank you.
I'm not that old. What about this rumor? Apple may add a Pro mode to Catalina. This comes from the 10.15.3 beta, that there is a little code, Pro mode on description. Apps may run faster, but battery life may decrease and fan noise may increase. Fan speed limit overridden. Does that make sense? A mode
that should just be normal. Like for a laptop, that should just be normal when you're plugged in. And then I guess you make it optional if you're not plugged in.
I agree. Can't you? Isn't
there
power
management?
Is otherwise known as ludicrous.
Ludicrous mode.
Ludicrous speed.
Yeah.
This is rumored to be coming only to the 16-inch MacBook Pro and the Mac Pro mode.
I think a lot of us have
Mac
felt
Pro
like we're not getting
in.
all of it.
It should always be in maximum.
Like unless you
mode.
really care about, like, have a silent fan mode instead of like just let it go on Pro mode, and if you hate
that's
the fan
other way
more than you hate your render times.
You're right. The default should be fans on high, but if you're if you're in a sound studio or something, a recording studio, then you should have a mode that's whisper quiet.
Yeah.
Whisper mode. That would actually be more attractive, wouldn't it? Whisper mode. European lawmakers, we talked about this on iOS today, want to make all smartphones have the same charging port, not Lightning.
Haven't we been talking about this for like 10 years?
They've been working on the law for 10 years.
Actually,
it was dongle at first, right?
I want to credit the European Union because it originally was micro USB, which admittedly is not the best standard. But
that's the fear, right? Is that they'll pick the worst port.
Well, the fact that they originally wanted to do micro USB. Imagine if they had standardized on micro USB, and then everybody comes. Then there's USB-C, but everyone has.
And
to use
the minute
USB.
they say USB-C, the consortium is going to announce micro USB-C, and we're just going to throw our arms up at that point.
Apple said this was a year ago. Regulations that would force all smartphones to have the same charging port would freeze innovation and be bad for the environment. I'm not sure what the logic is there, and unnecessarily disruptive for customers. But isn't Apple actually moving to USB-C at some point? I mean, they started doing it with the iPad
or no
Pro.
ports. I mean, that's a lot of vendors are now going with no ports.
I am not buying a no port phone.
You say that now, Leo. But
I said I wouldn't buy a phone with that headphone jack either.
Yeah.
So maybe.
And the Galaxy S20 is going to have a headphone jack. I mean, welcome to the future.
Makes me sad.
Well, welcome to capitulation. Okay, let's not say that.
It's the Galaxy S20, and it's from the future.
I was resistant against this idea, but you know what? Now I realize that I'm so much happier now that I can't use most of my headphones, and I'm screwed today during my commute because I forgot to recharge my headphones, and unfortunately it uses a different sort of charge adapter than the charge that I have with me. So I'm just
for the environment.
Yeah, I'm sorry if I'm snippy. It's just that every time I'm not even a complaint, but just like, oh, isn't it funny? I happen to grab the wrong headphones, and now I have the Lightning version. When I thought I was grabbing my USB-C version. It'll always be 100 people.
I've done that with my MacBook.
You still use wired headphones? You wouldn't have this problem if you used Bluetooth. I'm like, yeah, gosh, Bluetooth. Was it Bluetooth, you say? Let me write that down. Wow. Thank you very much.
I think my big thing with the European law is just that you don't have to fix everything with a law.
That's a good point.
Like, you just don't have to. Like, you just don't have to.
But I want to give them credit because you probably remember it, but many people don't remember that for a long time, phones, each one had its own jack. I have a host of phones in my museum over here. I can't charge,
but that wasn't fixed by law.
I can't use anymore. Well, I think it was. I think the EU passed a law saying you have to have a standard phone jack. Remember, Apple used to have to ship the iPhone with a dongle to support micro USB. That changed the world. It used to be every phone had its own, like it was with computers. To some degree, it's technology that's changed it because now the Type-C is so good. I think a lot of people are just choosing it. A lot of companies are choosing it.
So what about other devices? Because like everything has a normal plug at the end. Like every because the wall outlets are the same, so you have to have that plug. But every computer I see has a different damn thing that you plug into the laptop or something.
It's changing now, and I think it's going to USB-C, and I hope that happens because it's really
if it forces everybody to use USB-A on every phone, that would be bad.
That would be bad.
But if it does. But if it does say that, okay, if you really are all that gung ho and you think that it's so important to not have a headphone jack or to not have some sort of a standardized port, that's fine. But now you're going to have to pack in an analog headphone adapter, or you can still have Lightning, but you're going to have to pack in a USB-C because we basically have said this is a standard. This is the one type that you have to use everywhere.
Yeah, they standardize power plugs. That's I'm sure that's
no, we haven't,
but not the
other end.
Have we? The other end,
in Europe, it's a disaster. I mean, I think Europe should tackle power plugs before they tackle phone plugs because
every country's different.
Oh my gosh, I have a box full of all these adapters. This one is for Italy, and this one is for Germany.
And the side of the road that you drive on. Can we just?
Oh my gosh,
pick one.
Those things have way more impact on our life than what phone would.
The width of train tracks. I mean, we're not going to invade each other by train anymore.
Is that why they're different? So you can't invade?
That was one of the things. Yeah, so that it would be harder to ship troops by train across them. Humans are remarkable.
I'll tell you who's unhappy right now: the location-based ad market. Couldn't happen to a nicer bunch of people. What they're pissed off about is iOS 13 because you get those. I think it's the best thing ever. They tell you
it's so great.
Hey, this Google app has been monitoring your location. Look at all the places.
It's spy shaming.
Yeah, and apparently, 7 in 10 iOS 13 location signals analyzed by Location Verification Business Location Sciences downloaded iOS 13 in the 6 weeks after it first became available. 80% of those users stopped all background tracking. They just because when you get that pop-up, always allow,
you're like,
don't allow.
And remember the Bluetooth one too? Like all those apps were suddenly asking for Bluetooth access, and they had no business.
Yeah,
because they wanted to get you at every single one of the beacons.
People opting in to share data with apps when they're not in use often below 50%.
But
the 3 years ago, it was almost 100% said, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. It is incumbent on the folks that are tracking our data to give us back something that is worth more than our data to us. And they're not doing that. They're just like, I just want to quietly take your data.
If I get a coupon for 50% off the Domino's pizza I'm driving by right now, that's something.
But that hasn't happened, really. I mean, and the thing is that, and 50%, you know that it's 50%.
Well, what do they want? They want a location for some reason.
You'll see 50%, you'll go, oh, that'd be great, except that it's 50% off the second Domino's pizza, and you have to buy the large one with so you're way into it, and it's not going to be worth it. That's how these guys work. And so the thing is that there are lots of things that I think people are going to get excited about around location, which is that there are. If you gave people great location data, they would give you the location back. So if you go to into an arena,
I leave locations on my maps because I like that Google will give me a track of all the places I've visited.
Right.
I don't mind that.
But these aren't Google. It's like the big argument against data harvesters and surveillance capitalists was that, they're selling your data. And then we got this big pushback saying, no, data is way too valuable to sell. And that's still true as far as with Google. But Facebook proved with Cambridge Analytica that there are things that they will sell your data in a heartbeat to get. And I think all the smaller companies, too, we have just absolutely no transparency or insight into what they're doing and brokering and selling in terms of our data. And all of these things are just additional points that they can put together to make these vast social graphs of who we are and what we buy and where we go. And it's like we were talking about with the FBI stuff. The amount of data that they have on us now is it's stupefying. If you could ever just sit back and see that map.
The Norwegian Consumer Council is now filing former complaints against Grindr, Twitter's MoPub, AT&T's AppNexus, OpenX, AdColony, and Smatto. They're being filed with the Norwegian Data Protection Authority for breaches of GDPR because they've found that essentially the advertising industry is systematically breaking the GDPR privacy laws.
Yeah.
Yep.
Every time we use apps, hundreds of shadowy entities are receiving personal data about our interests, habits, and behavior, according to the Norwegian Consumer Council.
The carriers were selling it to bounty hunters, and they were ordered to stop, and they still kept doing it.
Yeah, and and you know, with GDPR and now the new California Consumer Privacy Act, I have a feeling we're going to start to see some lawsuits.
Well, and the advantage that Apple has over everyone else is that they don't depend on advertising, and so what they're doing is they can keep on closing these gaps down, and it doesn't affect them. I can just turn this down, and they're not getting any rain. So I think that, and if you don't like ads, and from people I've talked to in the ad world, the walls are closing in. Like that's their problem, is that they're desperate to find new ways of
good because I feel like they're closing in the walls on podcasting, and because we don't track. And they would really like us to track. And
Spotify is doing injection now, right?
Spotify is going to track you on their exclusive. If you're listening to a podcast exclusive from Spotify, they're going to send those advertisers all the information they want because you're using their app. And
do live
Marco
injection of
Arment
the ads into the
tweeted
shows,
about this. He said that's why you need to support Overcast and other open podcast platforms who refuse to track you. And I agree 100%. On the other hand, it's getting harder and harder to sell advertising to companies who say, well, wait a minute. I want to make sure that advertising is reaching this demographic group.
But
we can't say that.
It's so interesting because the more and more data they want, the less and less valuable the ads get. And it seems like they're missing the correlation there. Like back in the days of broadcast television or magazines, they had no idea really
they want it because they can get it. They want it because Facebook and Google gives it to them. And so they say, well, we get it from Facebook. Why don't we get it from you? Not that they really need it.
But look at just Squarespace. I mean, the old brand awareness still works. Like if you think of a website, you think of the last company that you heard, or WordPress, or all these companies that invest in brand advertising. It is still incredibly effective, and as far as I know, it converts really well.
You're preaching to the choir, as you know. We agree. But I mean, I don't do our ad sales, but Lisa does, and she's getting increasing pressure from agencies and advertisers to. We don't do tracking.
It's self-defeating.
One of the things we're looking at, there are services. I don't know if we're going to do this or not. We're talking to people. There are services. For instance, I think it was a big insurance agency. You've seen many of their ads on TV that said, well, if you would use this service, basically every download goes through our servers so we can count downloads because we at least want to give them that. How many impressions? That's how we charge. But if we would add another redirect for this service, they would then get apparently only collect IP addresses, but they'd collect IP addresses of everybody who listens. And then if the advertising agency says, well, we got people at this IP address to buy insurance, we'll match these up, and then this company would match it up. So neither party would get that information, just the so-called trusted third party. Then they could say to the insurer, 33% of your new business came from Twit. That would be valuable to us. Does it protect people's privacy sufficiently? I think as long as this third party never gives up this information.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to tell people we're doing it. We would be transparent.
I have a feeling it will lower the ad revenue over time because they'll get more and more fussy about those numbers.
What do you think ad agencies want to do? They don't. Yeah, they want to pay less. That's their goal.
And then they get worse. It's the opposite of the Apple Store. The Apple Store adds employees, and they become more and more successful. And the big boxes keep reducing employees, get worse and worse success levels, and then further reduce the employees as if that's the way to fix it.
Yeah. It's a crappy business advertising, I have to tell you. But hey, the good thing about that is we don't have to charge you for our product. I mean, it's costly to make our product. We ate the entire cost of the CES adventure because nobody would buy it. We couldn't sell the ads for it. And believe me, we can't do that very often. But that's why I only had one camera and one microphone. It was just me and Ant going around like this. We had spent for the booth, when we had the booth in the South Hall, remember, for several years, that was hundreds of thousands of dollars. I couldn't do that without advertising.
Right.
So I'm grateful that we can be an ad-supported network. All my whole life has been ad-supported. I've never had subscription-based products. And I think I would just ask our listeners, I mean, people say they'd pay, but they won't. So don't you like it that everybody who wants to listen can?
It's the ad networks. Like, it's all the intermediaries that have got in between it. And it seems like that whole classic Star Wars thing where the more they tighten their fist, the more business just leaks out on all sides around it.
I want to end on a happy note, so we'll stop talking about this. And I will talk about the fact that Apple is now making it easy for you to donate to our friends in Australia who are suffering horrific bushfires. Apple will accept donations to bushfire relief. The website in U.S. and Australia has been updated, so you can click a button. They've done this before. Donate to the Red Cross. Between $5 and $200 in the U.S., it goes to the American Red Cross. In Australia, it'll go to the Australian Red Cross. Apple, as always, collects no processing or handling fees, so 100% of your donation goes to providing relief efforts for the Australian bushfires.
I did it directly to the fire brigades, which is great too, and to the wildlife relief.
Yeah. I think there are people who say, I don't want to give money to the Red Cross, but there are plenty of places you could donate, and it's certainly much needed at this point. So we have so many listeners in Australia, and we, of course, every time we see the news, we think about you.
Oh, can I mention something quickly, Leo?
Yes.
There is a replacement program for the battery cases for the iPhone XS, XS Max, and XR. If either the battery case doesn't charge or the battery case does not charge your iPhone, you can contact Apple or go to an Apple store and they will replace it for you.
Is this a defect or is this wear?
I don't remember how they termed it, but there's an issue with a very small percentage of our users who are having trouble with. But it's just important to know because I believe those cases sold relatively well.
So if you have an iPhone XS, XS Max, or XR, and you're having trouble with your smart battery case, that's the one that looks like a cobra that ate a mouse.
Yes. Then
you can get it replaced, which is nice. As always, details at Apple's website. And I suspect that they usually do this with the recalls. There's a serial number lookup function on the website. Is there? I don't know. Or maybe you have to go to the, let's see here. Eligible models. Oh, no, you don't have to look it up. Just if you have one, get it replaced at an Apple authorized service provider or at an Apple retail store. Okay. They were manufactured between January 2019 and October 2019. It is not a safety issue. So they're not blowing up or anything.
They just won't charge. It is I had that happen not because of this issue, but when I was at WWDC, I plugged it into a hotel outlet, and the hotel outlet was just terabad, and it fried the whole thing, and it never worked again. And it didn't charge my phone. It didn't charge the iPhone case, and we had the keynote the next morning. So I woke up one of the worst situations ever. And after that, I was very careful in testing all this stuff first.
And Apple reassures you the affected battery cases will be disposed of in an environmentally friendly way.
Yes.
So there.
And it's not dangerous, so people don't have to worry about
Liam will eat them.
Terrified of Liam.
All right, get ready. Your picks of the week coming up, folks. But first, a word from our fine sponsors. We love them, Capterra. Capterra, if you are in business and you use enterprise software, is a solution I think a lot of you are looking for. There is, for almost any line of business, for any business use, there is great modern software out there. And I still see people say, oh, yeah, I'm using Windows XP because the software that Joey wrote, the boss's nephew, 10 years ago, he disappeared, and that's all we can use, but our whole business runs on it. There's a better way. Capterra, a free directory of the best enterprise software, 700 categories, thousands of programs. All you have to do is enter the category you want, and it could be very specific, like yoga studio management, or it could be very general, like video editing or digital workplace software, video management. I mean, you just look at all these categories. In almost every category, there's literally 5, 6, a dozen programs you can choose from. It'll give you all the information about each of the programs you need. You can narrow it down if you want. They have a smart search tool plus filters, So you can really narrow it down a lot, very specifically to the job you want to do. But then the best part, because when you go to Capterra.com/MacBreak, there are over 1 million reviews from real users. They vet every single one of them. So these are people that have actually used it. You can create a comparison chart, look at all the features, take a look at the reviews, pick one you like, and it's all free. Capterra can help your business thrive by making the software buying process as easy and effective as possible. It is a great solution for anybody who's suffering with bad software. It'll tell you how you can get the most out of your software tools and services before and after you buy. And because it's free, I think a lot of people pay it forward. They like to leave reviews. I guess that's why there are so many reviews. So, join the crowd. Leave a review. Continue to help Capterra be the leading free online resource for software solutions. There's also guidebooks, free step-by-step ebooks, articles. There's a lot of information there. If you need software for your business, find it free at Capterra.com/MacBreak. Everything you need to make an informed software decision for your business. Capterra.com/MacBreak. Capterra.com/MacBreak. Capterra is software selection simplified. And please do use that special URL. It's the only way Capterra knows you saw it here, because we're not tracking you. So go to Capterra.com/MacBreak. That's how you tell them, oh, yeah, I just heard it on MacBreak Weekly. That helps us. And it makes us happy. Renee Ritchie, how about a pick of the week?
So I'm going to play the role of Alex Lindsay on today's show before Alex Lindsay gets to play that role. I've been all about lighting lately, trying to find better and more useful lighting. And I had the digital Sputniks behind me, but now I've gotten into Quasar Science, which is very similar. It is an LED behind this I don't know what the proper term is. It's just like a tube. There's two strips or multiple strips of LEDs in here. What's really nice about this one is that you can plug it in directly on one end, rotate in the right direction. There is a cable that you can use as well, but you can plug it in directly. And on the other end, there's this little menu, and you can switch the color, the intensity, all these different things. And the reason I like them is that hue lights are phenomenal. They're fantastic. But when you start filming, you can get a lot of shutter roll with them. Or you have to adjust your shutter speed, and then you lose some of the proper looking motion blur on what you're filming. So I've been looking for more stable lights, and these are both really, really bright and really, really colorful.
And they support DMX.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yes. Yeah, they absolutely do. They look expensive. The 4-inch ones. There's also two. This is the 2-foot one. They have 4-foot ones as well. But what you're getting for that price is way beyond what you used to be able to get for that price. And you can just tape these up to a light stand. You can get a clamp if you want to get fancier and put them into like a C-stand. All of those things. So I'm busily swapping out some of my hue lights for these right now, and I'm quite enjoying them.
Maybe we should get some, huh? They're
using a lot of
our RGB lights are like for discos.
Jonathan Morrison recommended to me. He's like, "Hey, I noticed that your shutter speed was all wrong, and your lights, and just get these."
Well,
so
a lot of times also it's when you turn them down, because a lot of times
that's how they turn it down. They change the flicker rate.
They're slowing down.
Yeah.
So we have that all the time with lower quality LEDs, where you just see this weird roll because they're getting down into the frame rate of the camera.
And Alex has been really kind and sent me tons of advice, and that's how I'm improving. So I really appreciate it, Alex.
Yeah, absolutely. It's looking good.
He never sends us any advice.
He's right there to do it.
You never ask.
I say, I don't want to know. I like it low quality.
I look way worse than you, Leo. That's what we're finding out here.
No, you look great. And of course, imore.com/vector is the place to go to see all of Renee's great video. Andy Yanako, what do you got for us?
I've been shopping around for a better audio CD ripper and audio converter. It is turning out that this is the year in which I take my first decade of the 2000s status audio library and upgrade it into the second decade of the 2000s. It was not intentional. It's just once you pull it one little thread, it's like, oh god, that's half the sweater gone. Okay, I may as well just make a new sweater at this point. So this is the year that I'm converting all of my Apple lossless files to FLAC. I'm finding a better now that I'm trying to get off my iTunes dependency. Now that it's no longer it's no longer the modern Apple app, and so I found a really good open source ripper and converter called XLD. There are a lot. If you do a Google search for Mac audio converter, you're going to find like 24 of them, and some of them are kind of sketchy looking, because it's like, oh wow, this is a really incredibly full-featured app that you're not charging anything for, and it's not open source. Where are you making your? And it's too professional looking to look like it's just like a labor of love project. This is full open source, and it does everything that I want it to do. Because number one, it is a CD ripper, so it'll rip the CD. It'll also, to me, ripping a CD is just the first step. You also have to fix all of the stupid, boneheaded decisions that whoever it was 10 or 20 years ago first ripped it and put into the CD database made. So that yes, if Elton John did do a duet on one track of this 22-track album, that doesn't make it a compilation. It's still an Elton John album. I'm still kind of upset about that sort of stuff. It'll get the album art, all that sort of stuff. Most important thing is, though, for me, is that unlike iTunes, it'll support FLAC, so it's the more compatible lossless CD rip format. But the other thing that I needed to do is to take like 120, 130, 140 gigabytes of music files and convert them all into FLAC or convert them all to something else. And it's not quite as simple as a drag and drop, but once you take 15 or 20 minutes to set it up properly for like the folders you have and where they need to go, you can just walk away for half a day or so and go get pancakes or whatever and come back and it'll actually work. So I'm very, very happy with it. It doesn't try to be a slick interface. It just tries to be a very, very efficient tool. It's open source. It's free, and also it's not really shady. So if you want to get rid of iTunes as much as pretty much everybody else who has ever used iTunes wants to get rid of iTunes, including Apple, but you're looking for something that replaces some core features, then yeah, I think that XLD is going to be on my toolbar for quite a while.
Funny that you should mention that, because I've been faced myself with a recent conundrum. I've been getting screener discs to see all the movies. This because I'm in SAG, the Screen Actors Guild. I don't know, somehow sneaked
Nice.
into that. And I love the screener discs, but I don't have a DVD player attached to a TV that I can use in any way conveniently. I wanted to put it on Plex. So I was searching around and I found a great Jason Snell article just updated a couple of days ago, How I Rip DVDs and Blu-rays. And he did recommend, and I'm not going to get a $200 4K UHD compatible DVD ripper that can be flashed for region code, and so forth. But the other thing he recommended, which I have been using, is Make MKV, which is you know about it, ripping software for Windows and Mac.
I was just using it last night to get this Japanese-only edition of Columbo in HD into my library. So,
what do you use as a reader? Do you have a UHD reader?
I don't use. I've not gotten into Ultra HD yet because I just haven't. I just use a Pioneer Blu-ray.
Yeah.
It's actually attached. It's actually got a CD locked and loaded to go. But yeah, this one costs about $100. It's compatible with Blu-ray and DVD and CD. And I've been using it for the past like 3 or 4 years. And
so the amazing thing about Make MKV is you put your disc in there, and even though these are all copy protected, somehow it just magically rips it off into an MKV, which is great. And then I just drag it over to my Synology, and Plex is really good at recognizing MKVs and matching them up and giving you all sorts of album art and trailers and all that stuff.
Yeah, they're fantastic.
Yeah, it really is a nice feature.
I usually throw it into Handbrake just to get them a little bit smaller. I can't get. Maybe it's different with 4K. They're
huge. I agree.
Yeah. They are huge, and you can get them. And I don't notice any real loss of quality when I transcode them down to a level that I want. The other cool thing is that Handbrake lets you really easily adjust your expectations for a certain thing. Like if I am ripping something, like I was at the libraries, like any DVD for $1 bin. They had the Sex and the City movie. I decided, okay, that's worth $1 to me. When I ripped that one, I got the quality level all the way down, just like the quality of the movie itself, because I don't really want to invest a lot of storage space in it. But last month I got
Well, these
You know
screeners,
it.
I have to tell you, are 480p, so I don't really
exactly.
I don't need
Right.
to
But
compress
when
them
I got
any further. They're already crappy.
But when I got the box, the new box of the new final We Promise version of Apocalypse Now, that one went, you know what? I'll just take as much data and as much quality as you possibly want. It's worth it. So yeah, Jason has advised you well. I think that when I first started ripping Blu-rays and DVDs, I used like the 2005 version of that guide. It was very, very
He's been doing it a long
easy
time.
to recommend.
It's $50, but you can use it for 30 days, which frankly is all for free, which is all I need to get the screeners because they're going to be going
I swear,
away.
if you get into this comes into I want you to have. I'm registering this because I want you to have money for this wonderful tool that you've made, and they keep updating it like every single month or two, and it really has worked with every disc I've ever tried on it.
Look what
if you're really persnickety, github.com/Don Melton was updated, I think, yesterday as well. And he he makes tools for Handbrake and for command line, FFmpeg. And he just tries to get everything as pristine as possible at the smallest size possible.
I'll have to look at that. I'm not so worried about size because I just bought a new Synology, and the new 16 terabyte Seagate Iron Wolf drives are down to under $500 for 16 terabytes. So I have 30 terabytes of storage.
But he wants the right red in Private Ryan, Leo. It's not just the size; it's the right red in Private Ryan.
Oh, well, I'm not trying to compress them, is what I'm saying. I got enough room for several thousand movies on there. I'm not too worried about it.
But I find, but you will run out at some point. I finally maxed out my 8 terabytes. And that's just with media. And now I'm trying to figure out, do I want to like upgrade to a 4-bay NAS? Do I want to just put all my movies on like a pair of standard USB drives outside? And and like I'm actually thinking about what if I were just, instead of spending $800 on like all this other extra storage, what if I were to buy a couple of extra like 12 terabyte drives, standard USB, use one for the actual storage, another one for backup of the first one. It's and this is defined as the fun italicized of like managing your own media library, because it is fun. I have to realize that part of what I enjoy is explicitly when I have this hankering to suddenly watch like every Columbo again because I love them so much, and it's right there waiting for me. But part of it is knowing that I'm going to rip this, but I'm going to make sure I tweak the settings properly. I'm going to edit the metadata and put this in the special collection so I can find it. Yeah, it's nice to curation is a hobby in and of itself.
Here's the Don Melton GitHub page, github.com/Don Melton. And
what else is he going to do in his retirement?
Scripts. That's awesome. Alex Lindsay, pick of the week.
So last WWDC, Apple released Reality Composer. So what Reality Composer did was really make it much easier for you to take 3D objects and put them into AR. And be able to integrate them with your Xcode projects and so on and so forth. And so Reality Composer was great and is great. It's great. You can place it. You can very quickly send it to your phone. And then immediately see how it's working. And I use it a lot to test. The one problem with it was that you couldn't get any objects into it. So that while there was a thing to do it, it only works with USDZ. Now, USDZ Apple released 2 years ago. Or
remember we talked about it when they announced it.
Super exciting.
Yeah.
So USDZ, so what it was is USD, which is Universal Scene Description, which is the primary format that Pixar uses to move things around. Apple looked at it and said, if we zip this, it'll be smaller and easier to manage. And so they zipped it, and so it's USDZ. And so you have this format that Pixar developed, Apple's making more popular, but it's not that popular yet. And so the real issue that we had was every time you build something, and so I want to build there's no software, very few pieces of software that build in USDZ, which is what you need to put it into Reality Composer, which is what you need to put it on your phone, which is what you need to put it into your project. And so there was this huge missing thing. You'd build something, and then I found a piece of software, little piece of software out of Jordan that will do the conversion and everything else, but it was really hard and difficult to do it, to get it in. So what Apple has released as of yesterday is Reality Converter. So Reality Converter takes all most of the major software, and most importantly OBJ, which is the one we really need to make sure we support. It takes the OBJ format and converts it to USDZ. Now I know this may seem like a minor thing for folks who don't do this, but it was a huge missing, chunk in the it's like the track went here and then the track started over there and there's like 100 feet that were in between that was slowing everything down. And so having this ability to convert, and I've tested it in the pipeline. So I built a photogrammetry model, exported it with textures, ran it through Reality Converter, put it into Composer. I did this all this morning, actually. So, because I had to update to Catalina finally on my iMac. I've been putting it off. I was like, oh, I know I'm going to break a bunch of things, and I did. So this morning, I kind of went through that whole pipeline of building the thing from scratch, putting it all in, and it worked perfectly. Going into these are just little USDZ models. But
if you go to this with iOS 13, you can actually put a teacup on your desk or a flower.
Well, you can down. These models are already in USDZ, so they're not. That's that, and they've been there for a while. And Apple was putting those out. But the big thing now is that no matter what,
you can take what
3D software that you're using, you can easily get those source files into Reality Composer. Now, right now it's just Reality Composer, but obviously the operating system is supporting USDZ or kind of moving that direction. That's what Apple's talked about at WWDC. So imagine, someday I can dream that someday we're going to see it in Pages and in Keynote.
Oh, that would be cool.
And so being able to get the models easily into those. And the cool thing about USDZ is that it's not just limited to it's a model. Those models can have animation. They can have behaviors. They can have other things embedded into them that would allow us to do, you can do a lot more with them, and starting to add those to documents, add them to email, add them to lots of other things. And so but again, a big piece of the missing part of this track was converting from what all the software that we use to build 3D into the format that is needed to work inside of this. And so I'm just excited that Apple has done it. If you do what I do, you should go get it because it's great. If you don't, then it probably won't mean anything to you right now.
It's free, right?
But it's free, and I don't know what you'd know what to do with it if you don't do 3D.
If you don't know you need it, you don't.
You don't need it. But the point is that what it's going to do though is it's going to make it easier for people as USDZ becomes something that's embedded in more applications. Forward-thinking applications are going to start adding that, to their support. So just what Apple's making easy is just like you would add a picture to your document or a movie to your document, you just drag and drop it in. Soon you're going to be able to do 3D, or just take a 3D object and just throw it in there and rotate it around and so on and so forth. And I think it's going to revolutionize documentation. And so I think it's more than this. This is more than AR. It's something that is going to be a big deal, and we're just seeing these little drips, going along the path.
Not to be confused with the United States Department of Zynga. It's not related. USDZ Reality Converter, free from Apple as of January 13th. So just came out.
Great work.
Lori Gill, I think we need an amuse-bouche after all those heavy-duty programs. You got something for us?
Let's do something that every single person can appreciate, which is a trackpad on your keyboard for your iPad. And Bridge, BRYDG, makes the first-to-market version of that. So this is a trackpad on a keyboard for your iPad Pro.
Did you try this at CES? Because you can't get it till March.
Right. So they actually sent me a prototype. So I've had it for a few weeks. I used it as my sole device when I was at CES. I just wanted to try it out just to see how hard it was to use an iPad instead of a Mac for traveling and covering things. And it turns out it's a lot easier to do than I ever thought it was. I'd been kind of never wanting to use my iPad as my sole device just because what if something happens, but turns out it actually works a lot better than it used to with iPadOS. But the trackpad with this, so there's kind of two things to think about. Number one, it's still using the limited software that is the pointer device capabilities with iPadOS 13. So you're still it's not perfect. It's not a true mouse or click trackpad coverage. But then at the same time, it's the first to market that has a keyboard and a trackpad. So it's better than anything else because it's the only one out there right now. So it has some pain points to it in the clicking. The clicking is a little bit heavy. It's a little hard to click. I have the 11-inch model, and the trackpad is fairly small, which makes difficult things like dragging. So if you're trying to like swipe the screen, for example, you have to press down on the trackpad and then use your finger to swipe. And that's just an awkward experience on the trackpad that I have on the 11-inch one. I tried it at CES on the 12.9-inch one. It's much more convenient. But a lot of the problems that the trackpad has itself, it's just due to the fact that the software isn't quite ready for that kind of usability. It's
Apple's fault. It's not Bridge's fault, right?
It's just no trackpad is going to be any better than this. They're all going to be like this for now until
because you're using an accessibility feature as opposed to built-in trackpad.
Yeah. So just having a trackpad right there on your keyboard is pretty impressive. It's pretty cool.
But yeah, I have the Bridge keyboard only, and I just stopped carrying it because it's too damn heavy.
It is.
And I just rather carry a laptop if I'm going to do that.
Yeah, so I was thinking about that. I think somebody had actually mentioned that when the keyboard was first announced, and that's true. It's heavy. It's basically as heavy as a keyboard. But you have a lot more versatility with it. So if I'm taking my iPad Pro with me on the road, not my MacBook with me, I can pull that off the keyboard and just walk around with just my slate. Right. So that gives me that freedom of having a lighter backpack. If I know I want to use the internet, but I don't need all of the typing and tapping kind of stuff to do with it, I can use it to draw, if I want to sketch something with my Apple Pencil or something. So it adds a lot more versatility than using your Mac computer. So if the only thing that you can imagine using, a device with a screen that big is a laptop, then yeah, this is too heavy. It's not. There's no good comparison there. But if you want the versatility of leaving the keyboard behind in your hotel while you run out on the show floor, and then you're still using it for some things but not everything, then you go back to the hotel and you start typing. You plop that right down on the keyboard, and then you've got like some really good usability for both.
Nice.
Yeah, I should absolutely back that up, because I was using an iPad Pro as my daily driver, whether outside of the office driver, whether I was at a coffee shop for a couple hours or even like taking off for a weekend or a couple overnights in New York for business stuff. And I would pack like an external keyboard, which I love, and also like an easel. And the difference between getting to the coffee shop and taking out the iPad, taking out the easel, unfolding it, putting the iPad on the easel, taking out the keyboard, pressing the button to make sure that they're synced, that they're connected to the keyboard, versus just taking something out, unfolding it, and boom, you're done. That is such a huge positive, especially when you consider all the stuff that you get that's extra, and having something that is muscular as an iPad, as a touch device that can also be used so well just as a regular. I just need to write 2,000 or 3,000 words, and I only have 2 to 3 hours to do it. I don't want to have to take my hands off to do a multi-finger sort of thing. So yeah, I could definitely see that being for a lot of people, it's going to be worth the extra bulk.
Lori Gill, managing editor, imore.com. Thank you, Lori. It was great seeing you in Vegas.
Thank you. It was great, definitely.
We'll see you soon. Well, next week at Appaholic, APPAHOLIK.
You got it.
Alex Lindsay is Lindsay with an A, Lindsay on the Twitter.
I wrote a really long article.
Where was it?
I put it
on Twitter?
Medium. If you find it, you go to Twitter. No, I didn't put it on Twitter because you can't write out long articles on Twitter.
People try. I don't know
250
why.
characters. I wrote 3,000 words or something, 3,500 words.
Nice. Where is it posted?
It's like a decade of predictions. Everyone's doing their 10 year.
I like that.
So I wrote it, and then I literally cut half of it out because it was at like 7,000 or 8,000 words. I was like, okay, that's too much. You get a long break and you have some time and you start writing, and before you know it, it's really long. And so now it's down to 3,500 that I was like, okay, I'm just going to do that. So it's up on Medium. You can find the link on Twitter.
Good.
And it's crazy ideas, because I'm crazy.
You ever want to get cured of that, just say I'll write a book. Sign a contract to write a book. You'll never want to write again. Just fix you.
I've been threatening to write a book. So I decided I'm just going to. So what I have decided is I'm going to try to write release one article starting this week. It was supposed to be last week.
That's a good goal.
One article a week.
I like that.
And it's mostly because I want to write a book, but I'm like, I got to get.
Yeah, you got to get under your belt first. Yeah,
into the groove.
Yeah.
And
get into the groove.
Anyway, so there it is. I just released it before the show. So.
Nice, thank you, Alex. I can't wait to read it. Andy Nako is at WGBH, Boston Public Radio. When is your next big appearance?
I was just on yesterday, mostly talking about Facebook, trying to recognize that's radio, so I can't use appropriate words for talking about the latest news on Facebook. But I'm going to be on, so you can stream that at WGBHnews.org. I'm going to be on again on Monday, likely talking mostly about Apple and the FBI.
Nice. Mr. Rene Ritchie, of course, we know where we'll find you, imore.com/vector. Anything else you're working on? Everybody should read the article you just posted about the FBI. I think that's really important, that video.
Yeah, I just put up some iOS 14 wish list stuff, and I'm working. A lot of people asked how I do my videos, and while I'm by no means an expert on them, I have been doing a lot of raw and color grading and things in Final Cut Pro, which apparently is not the way most normal people do it. A lot of people use DaVinci Resolve or something like that, but I prefer the interface for Final Cut. So I figured out a way to do these almost exactly the same thing all in Final Cut. So I'm going to do a tutorial on that.
Nobody ever said you were normal, Renee.
No. Normal's boring.
Boring.
Exactly. Welcome to the freak world. We have jackets.
We do the show every Tuesday, right after iOS Today. Make it a all Apple day. iOS Today starts about 9:30 in the morning. We get to this show around 11:30 in the morning. That's Pacific time, of course. That would be 2 p.m. Eastern time. It would be 1800 UTC. You can listen and watch live at our live stream, twit.tv/live, or download on-demand copies of the show, of all of our shows from our website, twit.tv. For this show, it's twit.tv/mbw, or you can go to YouTube where MacBreak Weekly lives, and plenty of other places as well. In fact, the best thing that I would suggest is just to get a podcast application and subscribe. That way you'll get it automatically the instant it's available. We're on every podcast application existent, including Spotify and Overcast and Shoutcast and Pocket Cast and all the other casts. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Time to get back to work, because you know what? Break time is over. See you next time.